Marvel. The arrival of the young hacker, the attack on Wanda and Gwen. Chapter 1. Marvel, New York. Lying on the edge of a rooftop, a dog tail grass between his teeth. Jomo rummaged through his wallet while bemoaning the cruelty of fate. Why is my transmigration so messed up? He glanced at the Omnitrix on his wrist and sighed again. Jomo had been a 20-year-old college student watching the cartoon Ben 10 at home on vacation. A violent thunderstorm erupted. A bolt of lightning crashed through the window, TV and all, straight into Jomo. When he woke, the first thing he saw was Dormammu's silhouette. Startled, the scene shifted to citywide news reports about Iron Man. Jomo realized he had crossed into the Marvel universe. Along for the ride was the Omnitrix from Ben 10, now sitting quietly on his wrist. What should have followed was the standard protagonist script. With the Omnitrix, Jomo would steamroll everything and dominate the world. But after fiddling with it, he discovered the Omnitrix was freaking empty. He couldn't transform into any hero at all. Well, that's just bloody perfect. In a world crawling with super criminals and aliens, he was just an ordinary guy. Danger meter instantly maxed out. He took every bill from his wallet, tilted his head, and glanced down the side of the building. Jomo casually tossed the empty wallet over the edge. Oh right, I'm not ordinary, I'm just trying to stay alive. Done. He stood, rolled up his sleeves, and raised both arms. You could clearly see, on his left wrist, the so-called dumb watch, Omnitrix. On his right, a fist-sized black pentagram. Remembering it came from Dormammu made Jomo's skin crawl. Other travelers get starter gift packs full of perks, I get tagged by Dormammu. Tagged for no fool reason. This isn't just screwed, it's screwed by a rabid dog. As for why Dormammu marked him. Simple, really. After all these years, the guy still wants a chance to invade Earth. I swear, I could cry. JPG. If the Omnitrix's aliens could transform freely, Jomo wouldn't fear Dormammu. Ghost Freak, immune to physical and magic damage, could handle him easily. On second thought, Ghost Freak didn't feel quite right. He's great, but weak to sunlight, still a weakness. If Dormammu found it, Ghost Freak would still die. Best bet against Dormammu. X-Man, hands down. Facing Dormammu, X-Man would probably say, yo, bro, this Dormammu's just roadkill. Let him have both arms and legs, I'd still stomp him. A hell mode start. Zero powers, no idea which day Dormammu's black magic would kill him. What could he do? Well, whatever, let's eat first. Hands in pockets, depressed, Jomo headed for the stairwell. I remember a killer pork rice joint in Chinatown. Eyes rolling upward, he pictured the glossy promo poster on the restaurant's glass. Jomo couldn't help swallowing. Jomo had never been big on life goals. If forced, never work and have endless money. Eat good food, play games, binge anime, flirt with cute girls now and then. That was his ultimate dream. Happy or miserable, the day passes either way. Eat, drink, don't bottle things up. Jomo nodded to himself. Yep, add an ice-cold cola. Got money, why not splurge? As Jomo reached the stairs, ready to head down. Without warning, a red figure dropped from the sky, landing on the rooftop by the stairwell. The outfit was unmistakable. New York's friendly neighbor, Spider-Man. But Jomo's gaze swept the hero's chest and spotted something odd. Why is Spider-Man's chest so bulgy? Spider-Man struck the classic crouch, feet together on the ledge. One hand steadying herself, the other holding Jomo's discarded wallet. Gwen tucked her chin, eyes locked on Jomo. Eyes met. Jomo gave a nervous laugh. Didn't expect to run into you here. He instinctively stepped back, scanning for an escape route. No need for words, Jomo knew it. Spider-Man was here to arrest him. Gwen smirked. Sir, looks like you know what you did wrong. Dozens of floors up, she doubted he could escape. Nabbing a petty crook was easy. Jomo twirled the dog-tail grass. Found this in the park. Picking a common weed lands you in jail now. Gwen blinked, then gritted her teeth. Picking grass isn't illegal. But you also took the wallet under that grass. She raised the wallet for him to see. Classic case. Ask him why he's in jail. He says he only picked up a rope. Never mentions the cow tied to it. Gwen had zero patience for shameless punks. While they talked, Jomo had back to the roof's edge, nowhere left to go. He glanced at the urban abyss behind and scratched his head. Haha, yeah. Thought nobody wanted it since it sat there untouched. With a cold snort, Gwen lightly leapt to the roof and strode toward him. Experience told her. With shameless punks, less talk, more cuff and stuff. She pronounced sentence. Hope you can afford a lawyer. With your own money, of course. Jomo promptly thrust out both wrists. No fight left, surrender. Facing Spider-Man, who can take a punch from the Hulk. He's just a fragile college kid, why resist? He'd already weighed the consequences. Americans don't chop hands, and the wallet held under $300. Can't get more than a few days. They'll let me out soon. Plenty of zero-budget shoppers walk free, right? Why work? Had to work before transmigrating. Still have to work after transmigrating into Marvel. Then what was the full point? Seeing him surrender, Gwen had no intention of roughing him up. She actually liked crooks who cooperated. Up close, she suddenly noticed. This guy was kinda handsome. She felt a pang of pity. Young people nowadays, bright future ahead, why turn to crime? Suddenly Jomo's body jolted, he froze. He clearly felt the dumb watch. Had finally reacted. Warmth pulsed from the watch, and an alien hero's silhouette flashed in his mind. It was Wildvine. As Gwen reached out to web his wrists, Jomo, who'd stood stock still, moved. Placing the wallet, as evidence of the crime, into Jomo's hand, Gwen quickly wove a handcuff-like web. Looking down at Jomo's outstretched hands, Gwen's lips curled up, and a hint of disdain showed in her eyes. In Jomo's eyes, the black five-pointed star was Dormammu's death mark on him. But in Gwen's eyes, it was just a pure tattoo design. Theft plus a tattoo, and the tattoo design looked like a cult symbol. Gwen couldn't understand why Jomo, a young man who seemed to have a promising future, would turn out like this. However, this was all too common in New York. There are really more and more criminals. With a soft sigh in her heart, Gwen prepared to bind Jomo's hands. Just as her web-holding hands were about to fall on Jomo's wrists. Suddenly, with lightning speed, Jomo pulled his hands back, hiding them behind his back. The web missed, and Gwen looked up in confusion. Jomo lowered his head, responding with an enthusiastic smile. The next second, his body, like a snake, quickly bypassed Gwen and dashed out with a whoosh. At a glance, Jomo's movement speed was extremely fast. Both his flexibility and explosive power even vaguely reached the threshold of a professional athlete. Bypassing Gwen, as Jomo quickly rushed towards the stairwell, the wild demon Vine's figure in his mind clearly lit up. Combat experience plus 5%. Receiving the sensation, Jomo grinned and accelerated at the same time. The situation was already very simple. As long as he fought, he could unlock the alien hero in the Omnitrix. And the reason why the awakened alien hero was the wild demon Vine was not hard to guess. Spider-Man's characteristics were very similar to it. Finally understanding the Omnitrix's unlocking method, Jomo ran faster than a rabbit, as if he had been injected with a stimulant. Being hunted by Dormammu, what he needed most was combat power. Slowly accumulate combat experience through a chase, and the first alien hero will appear. Jomo's running speed clearly increased with the hope he gained. And behind him, the web handcuffs missed, and Gwen's body stiffened for a second. Jomo's running sound entered her ears, and a sense of humiliation from being played surged into her heart. Gwen couldn't help but close her eyes, take a deep breath, and silently clench her teeth. I should have guessed. How could such a scoundrel meekly surrender? Silently tensing her muscles and spirit, listening to Jomo's running, Gwen didn't even need to turn her head to fully perceive his every move. Finding an opportunity, Gwen bent her knees slightly and leapt backward. Immediately, a red figure drew a perfect parabola in midair. Light and silent, Gwen landed steadily in front of Jomo, blocking the stairwell. Seeing this, Jomo was forced to stop, quickly turned his head back and forth to look around, and couldn't help but be startled. That light jump, it must have been 20 meters, right? Experiencing the powerful physical quality of a superhero firsthand for the first time, Jomo felt a slight shock in his heart. At this moment, Gwen was already walking towards Jomo with light steps. She mistook Jomo's shock for fear. Gwen shrugged her shoulders and deliberately softened her tone. Now do you know how big the gap between us is? Give up resisting, sir, your destination is only the police station. Jomo nodded seriously and pouted. Indeed, the gap between us is still very large right now. After speaking, he glanced at Gwen's bulging chest again. Jomo added in his heart, however, Miss Gwen. Later, when my wild demon vine comes out, my vines will also send you to a destination. Although Jomo was not a hardcore Marvel fan, he still knew the information that the female Spider-Man was Gwen. Hearing Jomo's words, Gwen sighed wearily. The gap between us is still very large now. Does that mean he plans to accumulate strength in the future and continue to be her enemy? Will she really have one more sworn enemy? If she could, Gwen really wanted to properly remind the other party how big the gap between a mutant and an ordinary person is. Even if the other party worked hard lifting weights for 10 years, they might not be able to withstand a gentle punch from her. But now was clearly not the time for a science popularization lecture. She needed to quickly send Jomo to the police station, and then she would continue patrolling the streets to fight other criminals. Again, showing the web handcuffs in her hand, Gwen kindly reminded. Sir, if you continue to resist, it will hurt a lot. Jomo shrugged without speaking. Once again, she stood before Jomo. This time, Gwen had learned her lesson and didn't look away, locking her gaze on Jomo's eyes. With the blessing of rich combat experience, she could predict the opponent's actions based on their eye movements. Sir, I suggest you actively stretch out your hands. Before she could finish the word, hands, with a dull thud, Jomo delivered a liver punch to Gwen's abdomen. What followed immediately was Jomo's boxer-like footwork. With a 90-degree pivot, Jomo easily moved to Gwen's side. Catching Jomo's figure in her peripheral vision, Gwen sighed wearily again, turning her head to look at Jomo, who was bouncing in place like a boxer, ready for battle. Gwen said helplessly, "Doesn't it hurt?" Jomo nodded, truthfully saying, "It hurts." How could Gwen, with her spider sense, not detect Jomo's punch? That was why she didn't dodge. Jomo's punch hit accurately, and the sensation transmitted back was indeed that of hitting flesh. However, the impact force transmitted back gave Jomo a stinging sensation, as if he had punched a wall. This Spider-Man's physical strength is too outrageous, isn't it? The only thing Jomo could be relieved about was this. Combat experience plus 8%. Gwen turned to face Jomo. Looking at Jomo in his boxing stance, Gwen suddenly had a sense of déjà vu, like a cat toying with a mouse. Does this guy really not know how strong she is? Sir, I originally didn't intend to use violence. Gwen's soft voice came. But you keep making these meaningless resistances. I still want to finish this quickly. Jomo's lips curved upward, still maintaining his combat stance. Come on. Let's have a true 1v1 man's battle. He certainly knew the strength gap between himself, an ordinary person, and the superhero Spider-Man. But he had no choice. Without fighting, he couldn't unlock the wild demon vine. His combat experience was only 13%, still far from enough. Combat shouldn't just rely on the body, but also on the mind. Jomo, deeply aware of this, was about to say something to stall for time when he opened his mouth and saw a web coming straight at him. With a PFFT sound, Jomo's head was completely enveloped by the web, and his vision instantly went dark. Wait! Jomo shouted, wait! Looking at Jomo, who was trying his best to tear the web from his face. Gwen asked with concern, wait for what? Although she said that, Gwen's body honestly continued to shoot webs. PFFT. 2 webs were shot, one wrapping around Jomo's torso and the other around his legs. In an instant, Jomo was bound like a mummy. Jomo's only remaining struggle was to hop up and down in place. Coupled with his shouts of, unfair, unfair. Rematch, rematch. This rather comical scene made Gwen laugh. This guy is quite cute. Stepping forward, Gwen pulled off the web from Jomo's face to ensure his normal breathing. Looking at Jomo's face, which was full of indignation, Gwen smiled happily. Now you can obediently go to the police station. Jomo gnashed his teeth in humiliation. This woman is too babyish. At least let me throw a couple of punches. I haven't even gotten any experience points. Grabbing the web around Jomo's torso with one hand, Like carrying a suitcase, Gwen easily lifted Jomo. Gwen, who was 1.7 meters tall, easily lifted Jomo, who was 1.9 meters tall. This scene was quite impactful. Looking around, confirming the police station's location, Gwen walked towards the edge of the rooftop. Jomo, meanwhile, tried his best to squirm. He had only one thought left. Get more combat experience now, and when he's out, he'll go find Gwen again. However, despite Jomo's best efforts, he could only curl his body. After roughly understanding his range of movement, Jomo straightened his body, then quickly curled up, delivering a knee strike to Gwen. Well, this strike didn't even trigger Gwen's spider sense. Let alone a superhero, even for an ordinary person, it was just a tickle. In response, Gwen merely gave Jomo a faint glance. And that glance made Jomo freeze. No, it wasn't. The wild demon vine successfully unlocked. Can combat experience also crit? The first alien hero of the Omnitrix. Wild demon vine. Successfully unlocked. No time limit, and no manual transformation needed. With a thought, Jomo silently chanted in his heart. Wild demon vine. After being kneed, Gwen glanced indifferently at Jomo. Seeing that Jomo had shut up and chosen silence, Gwen naturally said nothing more. This is how it should be. Gwen was even a little confused. Does this guy not watch the news? Doesn't he know how powerful Spider-Man is? How could he even think about fighting her? He should know the gap between an ordinary person and a mutant, right? A cool breeze swept in from high altitude, and Gwen walked to the edge of the building. Before heading to the police station, Gwen spoke. Oh right, what's your name? As she spoke, Gwen lowered her gaze. A strange sight entered her view. Jomo's face was deforming and turning green at a visible speed. His body, which had been tightly wrapped like a mummy, also began to squirm, like a butterfly about to break out of its cocoon. The information traveled from her sight to her brain, and instantly, Gwen's spider sense exploded. This guy is a mutant. Gwen, having reacted, was about to reinforce the webbing when she saw Jomo, like an eel, slide directly out of the web cocoon. After sliding out in the form of a vine, the vine deformed and thickened, restoring the wild demon vine's true appearance. With a single eye and 4 vines for legs, the massive body enveloped Gwen in shadow. The wild demon vine stood right there on the edge of the building, looking down at Gwen. The vibrating spider sense caused Gwen's heart to tremble along with it. Instinctively, she quickly jumped back, creating distance. Looking at the wild demon vine from a distance, Gwen was clearly flustered. This was the first time she had seen such an alien in New York City. Jomo, now transformed into the wild demon vine, looked at his hands, deep in thought. Just a light tap increased the combat value by more than 80%. It seems the increase in combat value is unrelated to the intensity of the fight, it's completely random. Immediately afterward, Jomo was beaming with joy. Now he really wanted to ask Gwen a question. Have you ever heard of a palm technique descending from the heavens? Obviously, Gwen didn't know what Jomo was thinking. I must subdue this super criminal. The friendliness of the friendly neighborhood was swept away. Gwen immediately entered a combat stance, squinting coldly as she scrutinized the wild demon vine's body repeatedly. Nothing else mattered. Just possessing mutant abilities was enough to upgrade an ordinary criminal to a super criminal. The spider suit scanned the wild demon vine's body while comparing it to the database. After quickly cross-referencing the entire US database, Gwen still found no clues about the wild demon vine. This made her uneasy. A newly emerging mutant. When she spoke again, cold air was even visible coming from Gwen's mouth. Who are you? Who am I? The wild demon vine scratched its ear. Although it looked serious, its unique appearance made it seem slightly mischievous. Regarding this matter, I can only say that those who know, know. For those who don't, I won't say much. If I told you, you wouldn't understand, so it's better not to say anything. Just ponder it carefully. Don't come asking me what happened. The interests involved here are too great. Talking about it won't benefit either of us. Just pretend you don't know. For the rest, I can only say the water here is very deep, involving many things. It's hard for you to find the detailed situation, most of it has been wiped clean from the internet. That's why I say those who know, know, and if you don't, there's nothing I can do. The corner of Gwen's eye twitched slightly. He said all that, but it was like saying nothing at all. However, Gwen did agree with the last few sentences. Indeed, she couldn't find any information about the wild demon vine online. Could he be an experimental subject from some company? Is all this a conspiracy directed at her? These two guesses immediately popped into her mind. The current situation clearly didn't allow Gwen to keep thinking. The most important thing right now was, of course, subduing the wild demon vine. Against an unknown enemy, ranged attack was naturally the first choice. She raised her wrist, aimed at the wild demon vine, and simultaneously pressed the switches with her middle and ring fingers. The entire movement was smooth and seamless. In less than a second, a web shot out from her wrist, flying toward the wild demon vine. Keep the distance. As long as I can subdue him from afar, the fight won't be too difficult. No sooner had Gwen finished her internal thought than she saw the wild demon vine point a finger at her. A similar attack struck. The extended finger instantly elongated, turning into a larger green net. The webbing collided with the plant net. As if the webbing didn't exist, without offering even the slightest resistance, the plant net directly covered the webbing and continued to strike at Gwen. Gwen's heart tightened. The plant net grew larger and larger in her eyes. She even felt this plant net could swallow the entire rooftop of the building. The spider sense functioned again, driving Gwen to take two powerful backflips to increase the distance. Gwen was extremely cautious. These two backflips brought her directly to the rooftop of the adjacent building. Although the height was a few stories lower than before, it was still hundreds of feet in the air. Watching the plant net retreat back along the wild demon vine's extended finger, Gwen's pupils constricted. She could understand the ability to shoot a plant net. But to be able to retract it completely without leaving a trace. This ability was definitely not an ordinary mutant ability. Gwen couldn't hide her surprise. What exactly are you? Turning toward Gwen, the wild demon vine shrugged. I already said it. Those who know, know. If I tell those who don't, they still won't understand. Standing up straight, Gwen snorted coldly. HMPH, that was the same as saying nothing. The wild demon vine was undoubtedly difficult to handle. But if she backed down, she wouldn't be Spider-Man. If long range doesn't work, then close combat. Bending her legs and leaping forcefully, Gwen shot straight toward the wild demon vine like a drawn sword. Jomo clicked his tongue after seeing this. You want close combat? You think you can just do whatever you want? Then would I still be the wild demon vine? Pew tilde pew tilde pew tilde. One of the wild demon vine's signature abilities, several spores were fired toward the approaching Gwen. The spider sense instantly detected it, and Gwen's heart gave a sudden start. The distance between them was less than 15 meters. At such close range, Gwen could clearly see. When those spores were launched, their tails carried faint air currents. This speed was comparable to a bullet. How could a plant person launch spores with the speed of a bullet? There was no time to think. The first spore bullet was already in front of her. Just as it was about to hit Gwen head-on, Gwen quickly turned her head. The movement was perfectly synchronized, allowing the spore to fly past almost grazing her cheek. Seeing the spore bullet fly past, Gwen felt a surge of joy, planning to use the same method to dodge the remaining two bullets. Then she saw. That spore bullet exploded right before it was about to vanish from her sight. Her pupils involuntarily contracted. Gwen was certain she hadn't seen wrong. That spore bullet burst into flames and scattered an impact. A single plant spore exploded just like a bomb. This freaking violates botany, doesn't it? At this moment, the remaining two spores arrived next to Gwen. Bang! 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 3 explosions, 3 bursts of flame converged into one spot, engulfing Gwen's body. Jomo merely yawned after seeing this. If such a minor attack could hurt Gwen, then she wouldn't be Spider-Man. The flames dissipated, just as Jomo had expected. Amidst the residual smoke, a web line shot toward the glass of the adjacent skyscraper, and with a strong pull, Gwen swung away. She stuck one hand and one foot onto the skyscraper's glass. Although Gwen was unharmed at the moment, she looked considerably more disheveled than before. The explosion not only covered her suit in dust but also destroyed a quarter of her mask. At this point, anyone who looked could see the fair, jade-like skin around Gwen's sapphire blue eyes. It was not difficult to determine that beneath the mask was a young white girl. Gwen's mind was momentarily blank. She was practically stunned senseless. 7 or 8/10 of the surrounding skyscraper glass had been shattered. How could a few plant spores have such a huge impact? Also, where did this plant person pervert get his abilities? Jomo's mind, however, was very clear. Looking at Gwen, who resembled a frightened white rabbit, several thick vines grew out from the wild demon vine's back and waved vigorously. A mischievous smile appeared on the wild demon vine's face. Hey tilde hey tilde hey tilde. Ms. Gwen, you wouldn't want people to know about you being Spider-Man, right? Hearing this, Gwen's eyes widened violently, and her limbs went ice cold. He knows my true identity. Just as she recovered, Gwen saw those thick vines waving toward her. Gwen's slender body was immediately shrouded in the shadow of the vines. Now, Gwen's face went pale. What does he want to do to me? What can Jomo do? Of course, find some fun. As a transmigrator with a hell-level start, Jomo wouldn't turn evil to the point of being unable to refrain from committing murder or arson. But who knows, Dormammu might get rid of him someday, so shouldn't he find some fun to pass his barren and boring days? And in this world, what could be more interesting than getting close to a beautiful white US girl? Jomo's voice came with the waving vines. Don't worry, I'm not a good person. I'm not a bad person. Gwen curled her lips, sneering in her heart. Accidentally spoke the truth. Facing the incoming vines, Gwen began to dodge again. With her nimble figure and the assistance of spider silk, she actually dodged all the incoming vines. However, under the mask, the tightly furrowed brows never relaxed, but instead remained tightly locked. Gwen's mind was filled with only one question. How did he know her real identity? The possible questions stemming from this problem made Gwen's body feel as if it were frozen to the bone, becoming increasingly intense. Gwen ran in front, and the vines chased behind. While running, Gwen seized the opportunity and asked through gritted teeth, "How did you know my identity?" For Gwen, the only thing to be thankful for at this time was that there was no one else around. The glass windows of the building also had a soundproofing effect, so even if someone was watching, they couldn't hear what they were saying. The wild demon vine stretched lazily, yawned, and then lazily became a repeating machine. Like I said just now, those who understand, understand. If you don't understand, it's no use explaining. This time, Gwen wasn't just gritting her teeth, but grinding them. What is this guy saying? Is there any useful information? A layer of gloom covered her forehead, and Gwen was extremely puzzled. What exactly does this plant person who knows her true identity want to do? Suddenly, a flash of light flashed in Gwen's eyes. Of course, Gwen didn't guess Jomo's purpose, but thought of a way to deal with the wild demon vine. What are plants most afraid of? Fire. With an idea in mind, her actions became more decisive. While quickly traversing the building, Gwen's gaze occasionally moved down, searching for fire-related elements below. Soon, Gwen had an idea. Find a gas tank in the restaurant below and set fire to the wild demon vine. When that Asian youth cancels his mutant state, she will ask him properly. Acting on her thoughts, Gwen began to adjust her direction. Gwen believed that this would not be difficult. After a brief contact, she judged that one of the wild demon vine's attack methods was his own body. For example, these vines need to be retracted after being launched. And everyone learned the law of conservation of matter in the prenatal education stage, that is, no matter what physical or chemical changes occur in matter, the total amount of matter before and after the reaction remains unchanged. According to this theory, Gwen successfully deduced. No matter how the wild demon vine changes, his attack range will not exceed the limit of his body's mass. In short, the energy that the wild demon vine can provide is limited, and it cannot support a large-scale expansion of the vines. Understanding this, Gwen's confidence doubled. Just treat him as a monster with a wide range of attacks. Discovering that Gwen's direction of action had changed from hiding everywhere to moving quickly in a straight line towards a certain direction. Jomo could immediately guess that she was going to run. And based on Spider-Man's style, it was not difficult to guess that she had also found a way to deal with him. Well, indeed, Wild Demon Vine is afraid of fire. But before that, I want to show you something. Accurately capturing Gwen's back in rapid motion with his naked eyes, the wild demon vine pulled back with one hand to gather strength. That set of palm techniques from the sky. Whoosh. After completing the charge, the left hand stretched out. At the moment of stretching out, the arm and hand, and the body shape began to skyrocket. The incoming attack from behind awakened Spider sense. Just as Gwen sensed the danger behind her, she saw in the corner of her eye a green expanse. This amazing scene made her unable to resist looking up. Then Gwen saw. The sky above her head was covered by a green wood. At a glance, the green wood stretched for hundreds of meters, with no end in sight. Instantly, Gwen's small face was pale to the point of being bloodless. An extremely terrible guess arose in her heart. At this moment, time seemed to be infinitely slowed down, and Gwen could clearly hear her own muffled heartbeat. Little by little, she turned her head stiffly. The scene she was most unwilling to see happened, and the terrible guess in her heart was confirmed. The green wood covering the sky came from the wild demon vine. He was still standing in place, and she could see that his outstretched hand was integrated into the green wood covering the sky. At this moment, Gwen's brain instantly lost its most basic thinking ability. If the wild demon vine's ability to launch exploding spores was a violation of botany, then this scene is a violation of scientific principles. How could he, who wasn't particularly large, extend an arm hundreds of meters away to cover the sky? Completely unscientific. What exactly is this guy's ability? Just as Gwen was stunned, the green wood covering the sky contracted instantly without warning. Spider sense issued a warning, and Gwen's body was stiffened by the shock. Easily, the big hand made of green wood tightly grasped Gwen and returned to the wild demon vine's body. Throughout the whole process, Gwen's brain was still in a daze. You need to know that from beginning to end, the wild demon vine stood still. He just moved his fingers and crushed her. The gap between their strengths, coupled with the other party knowing her true identity. With the superposition of double powerlessness, Gwen suddenly felt that she might be killed. But even before she died, Gwen wanted to ask a question. What exactly is your ability? If there is anything that can be said with certainty. That is, Gwen is sure that a mutant of the wild demon vine's level is not something she can currently deal with. Pulling Gwen in front of him, the wild demon vine raised his eyebrows, whether it was provocation or playfulness. Weren't you running pretty fast? Gwen took a deep breath, revealing a full sense of vigilance. Can you tell me, who are you? And, what do you want to do to me? At the same time, Gwen was still trying to struggle. But as soon as she struggled out a little gap, the plant hand clenched even tighter. Me. Several thick vines behind the wild demon vine continued to wave. They roamed back and forth around Gwen like snakes smelling prey. Coupled with Gwen being tightly held by one of the wild demon vine's big hands. At a glance, well, the picture is full of an unspeakable strange atmosphere. Jomo's self-conscious voice sounded. I'm new here, I don't know anything about this place, I need a servant to arrange accommodation and living expenses for me. The word servant made Gwen curl her lips in disgust. Ignoring the sentence behind, Gwen seized the key point. New to New York. Are you from out of town or from a foreign country? Saying that, the wild demon vine rubbed his chin. As for who I am. Grinning at Gwen, Jomo's voice came. You can call me Otto. Gwen frowned. Oh. What kind of name is this? Yes, Otto. Am I handsome? Hearing this question, and facing this face, Gwen was full of resistance. But driven by the desire to survive, she still gritted her teeth and said with a reluctant face, handsome, Otto. With his inner evil taste satisfied, just as Jomo wanted to proceed to the next step. Suddenly, the dumb watch received a signal, and another alien hero figure appeared in Jomo's mind. Huh. Jomo turned his head and looked around. What is it that triggered the Four-Armed Overlord unlock condition? Four-Armed Overlord, one of the most famous and powerful alien heroes. Of course, Jomo knew him well. He was also Jomo's second favorite alien hero. With him, Jomo could basically one-shot every little Gwen. Yet after sweeping his gaze around and finding nothing, Jomo felt puzzled. Who here could possibly meet the unlock condition for Four-Armed Overlord? Gwen's voice rang out, pulling Jomo's attention back. Gwen asked tentatively, you, a criminal. By now, Gwen wanted to know the stance of this mighty mutant named Jomo. Jomo met her eyes, gave a cold grunt, and countered, "If I were an irredeemable criminal, do you think you'd still be alive?" Gwen had no reply. Inwardly she accepted the point. Indeed. Leaving aside the fact that he currently held her captive and could kill her in an instant. Just knowing her real identity was enough. He knew who she really was, yet hadn't targeted anyone close to her. That alone said plenty. Gwen reached a conclusion in her heart. A thief, but not a super criminal, seems his stance is pretty gray. Thinking of another issue, Gwen frowned and asked, "Then, Otto, you want me to find you a place to stay?" Jomo admitted it. Only a few hours earlier he had transmigrated here. What he needed most right now was a roof over his head. Which was exactly why Gwen frowned. She couldn't imagine what lodging she could arrange for him. Just as she was about to press further, the whir of helicopter rotors came from nearby. And the sound drew closer and closer. Her heart lurched. The thought, reporters, flashed through Gwen's mind. Come to think of it, New York reporters burn with gossip. After the ruckus the two of them had just raised, how could they not notice? On top of that, these folks court death for a headline. Even knowing the explosions came from high altitude, they still dared to fly a helicopter straight over. With the press about to arrive, Gwen couldn't help panicking. If Otto spouted something reckless on camera, it could drag the people close to her into trouble. And Jomo equally wanted no spot on the news. His search for clues to unlock four-armed overlord turned into scouting an escape route. He already had one Dormammu gunning for him. If he landed in the headlines, who knew how much extra hassle would come knocking? Whether hero or villain came looking, Jomo wanted none of it. Gwen also wanted to end the talk quickly and fired off the key question. How do I contact you, Otto, or are you planning to tail me forever? Jomo let go, turned, and, leaving the words, I'll contact you myself, jumped from the 100-meter height. The sight startled Gwen again. The building stood 70-odd floors, over 200 meters to the ground. He just jumped. No problem. Then she realized she'd worried for nothing. If she could simply swing away with webbing, he'd manage even better. She bent down and picked up the foxtail stem lying on the ground, her face full of disbelief. A withered grass came back to life. She remembered the grass color vividly, withered yellow. Yet now it had turned fresh green. The only explanation was wild demon vine. He can make dead plants burst with life again. What a frightening mutant ability. As for the source of Jomo's power, Gwen's eyes lit up. Don't tell me, some plant bit him. The chopper's rotor noise grew louder. She looked over and confirmed it was a news helicopter. From a distance she could already faintly make out the Daily Bugle logo on the fuselage. I'd better get out of here too. She returned to the edge of the building, ready to flee. Yet her mind was still on the gas canister. Her defeat this time wasn't just due to raw power but also to an information gap that left her unprepared. If she'd simply burned him with fire, would she have lost? What plant could survive a blaze? Just as she was about to leave, she caught sight of a crowd gathering below. She looked down, and with her super senses she saw clearly. A group of people stood in a circle, whispering to one another. That, a puddle of green goo. Gwen's brain short-circuited for a moment. The only thing that matched was the wild demon vine from earlier. So, he'd splatted himself to death. Gwen stood dumbfounded, wind whipping her hair. This really stumped her. Just moments ago the wild demon vine had been overwhelmingly powerful, crushing her. He'd made a deal and walked off in style. Classic New York superhuman fashion. But never in her wildest dreams had she imagined he could fall to his death. Granted, it made scientific sense. A 200-meter free fall is lethal even to most superhumans. Still, wasn't it all a bit anticlimactic? Such a mighty mutant gone in such a ridiculous way. She felt a twinge of regret, and a secret twinge of relief. Gwen exhaled, her eyes regaining their sparkle. At least the guy who knew my secret is gone. Yet looking at the green pulp and the juice smeared across the pavement, she sighed. Still, that was a life. The paramedics will probably need a shovel. The moment the words left her, startled cries rose from below. Along with a chorus of, "Fool!" and, "What the fool?" The crowd backed away in haste. The commotion snagged Gwen's attention again. Her senses synced with the scene below, her brows knotted and every hair on her back stood on end. She saw it. The green pulp quivered, then began piecing itself back together. In under 2 seconds the wild demon vine was fully healed, good as new. Gwen's eyes widened, lips parting in shock. She recognized the phenomenon. She possessed a healing factor herself. But this speed blew past everything she knew. If she fractured a bone, she'd be fine after a night's sleep. A factor at that level already gave her a huge edge. But Wild Demon Vine had been outright killed. Dead. And within seconds he resurrected and fully recovered. Even good girl Gwen couldn't stop the expletive that burst out. What level of healing is that? Instinctively she looked at the fresh green foxtail in her hand. Besides stretching his body as a weapon, he also has die and revive level regeneration. A chill crept down Gwen's spine. She couldn't imagine how she could ever beat a monster like this. Burning him might not even work. That's just insane. On the ground, meeting countless stares of shock and terror, the wild demon vine dove straight into the earth and vanished. At incredible speed he tunneled underground. En route, Jomo cursed in frustration. Tried to look cool and dive from the sky straight into the ground. Didn't expect the impact to smash me into a meat sandwich. First time, still need practice. Soon Gwen realized the Daily Bugle hadn't come for her. Inside New York Bank, Dr. Octopus rampaged, sending civilians screaming for help. He mowed down the hapless security guards in seconds. Dr. Octopus arrived at the vault door. Clearly, for the massive, high-tech door he couldn't be bothered hacking it. His mechanical arms stabbed like steel spikes. Bang, bang, bang. Strike after strike, without pause. After all, Dr. Octopus is the man with 4 mechanical arms. Dr. Octopus brazenly robbed a bank in broad daylight, naturally causing a riot throughout the city. Sirens blared, and police cars roared. Hearing this news from her earpiece, Gwen jumped into the Daily Bugle helicopter. "Gentlemen, give me a ride." The astonished reporters in the cabin looked at Spider-Man, who was standing inside the cabin with his upper body completely outside, with surprise and joy. They picked up their cameras and snapped pictures. They had already thought of the title, which was called, Confronting Dr. Octopus. Spider-Man appears in a Captain Jack style. Noticing the traces of battle on the spider suit, the reporters couldn't help but ask curiously. Gwen opened her mouth but didn't answer, just signaling them to pay attention to safety. Seeing the corner of the Spider-Man mask covered with spider silk, the reporters were sure that it must have been a fierce battle. As soon as he opened his mouth, the reporter wanted to ask more questions. Before he could say anything, he saw Spider-Man had already jumped out of the plane, leaving the reporters looking at each other. Don't these superheroes say hello before they leave? On the ground, the warning sound of evacuation echoed. Among the panicked crowd, Jomo stopped and looked up at the figure falling from the helicopter. He couldn't help but choked up and whispered, "I miss you, boss." With the help of spider silk, the falling Gwen quickly swung away. Jomo also continued to drift with the crowd without looking back. Help. That doesn't exist. It's better to have less trouble than more. He doesn't even know who the enemy is, so it's even more impossible for him to be a good Samaritan. Gwen, who was swinging in the air, also recognized Jomo's back in the crowd at a glance. Looking at the pace that was faster than anyone else, all Gwen could do was grit her teeth silently. With such strong abilities, wouldn't it be great to be a hero? Hasn't he heard the saying that with great power comes great responsibility? Continuing her job, she faced the citizens on both sides of the street who were gleefully taking pictures of her with their mobile phones. Gwen waved her hands and shouted, urging, "Leave here quickly. Dr. Octopus, that mad scientist, is nearby." After speaking, Gwen didn't see any reaction from these citizens, but her peripheral vision accurately captured Jomo, who had been running in the opposite direction with the crowd, suddenly slamming on the brakes. Then he instantly turned around and rushed towards her front at an even faster speed. This made Gwen wonder, what is he going to do? With the information supplemented, Jomo's thoughts immediately became clear. The unlocking trigger condition for four-armed overlord in the Omnitrix should be Dr. Octopus. 4 mechanical arms correspond to four-armed overlord 4 arms, which is also reasonable. Jomo also knows a thing or two about Dr. Octopus. As Gwen said, he is a mad scientist. After his consciousness was interfered with by the mechanical arms, he became obsessed with his artificial sun experiment and couldn't extricate himself. The reason for this riot now should be that he robbed a bank. Jomo remembered that in the plot, Dr. Octopus was abandoned by investors due to the failure of the experiment. In order to continue the experiment, he chose to rob a bank as a source of funds. Whenever he thought of this, Jomo couldn't help but smack his lips and complain. He has already chosen to commit a crime, so compared to robbing a bank, taking the money to buy experimental materials. It's obviously more appropriate to directly rob the materials needed for the experiment. Is it because he is worried that the person selling the experimental materials will be frightened by him, so that's why he's doing this? Harkinian, you guy. Sniffing, Jomo ran towards the place where the police sirens were gathering. Not long after, Gwen also followed the sound to the front of the bank and landed on the roof of a police car. At this time, the square in front of the gate had been surrounded by the police, layer upon layer. Using the police car as cover, the police aimed their guns at the gate. The leader felt relieved to see the familiar Spider-Man arrive and wanted to put away his pistol, entrusting the follow-up task to Spider-Man based on experience. But the fact that the previous police officer had sacrificed still made him resentful, so he turned the muzzle back. Listen, Spider-Man, we had 2 teams of police officers go in to rescue people, and they were all killed by Dr. Octopus. If you want to go in, you must be careful. Gwen stared ahead. The news of the police's sacrifice made her expression and tone become serious. Okay, leave it to me next. Believe me, no one else will die here. The leader smiled and nodded. Just as he was about to cover Spider-Man into the bank, he noticed Spider-Man turning his head to look at him. Is there an Asian youth who went in here? The leader was stunned, recalled, and shook his head blankly. I'm sure, no. The super criminal Dr. Octopus is in the bank. In this situation, if there is one, he would be running from the inside out. Apart from Spider-Man, no one else would take the initiative to jump into the fire pit. Nodding to show that she understood, Gwen jumped to the front sculpture and then entered the high-rise of the bank from the sculpture. In this case, sneaking in from the side is of course the most useful. The scenery on the ground fell from both sides. Arriving at the high-rise of the bank, Gwen took a deep breath to calm the regret in her heart before she pried open the window. This was not her first time facing Dr. Octopus, and the memory of the previous battle still made Gwen feel pressure. Dr. Octopus's 4 mechanical arms are incredibly powerful and extremely flexible, bringing great pressure to her. The last battle with Dr. Octopus made Gwen as embarrassed as she was a few minutes ago. If Otto was willing to deal with Dr. Octopus together, it would be much easier. I thought the reason he ran here was to help me. With her expectations failing, Gwen entered the bank and climbed onto the ceiling to quickly sneak down, searching for Dr. Octopus's location. Giving full play to her talkative characteristics, Gwen continued to mutter to herself while sneaking. Just talking about his self-healing ability, Dr. Octopus has absolutely no way to hurt him. The scene of Wild Demon Vine fighting Dr. Octopus appeared in her mind, and Gwen smiled evilly. He can exhaust Dr. Octopus to death. Suddenly, a loud muffled sound of bang came from below, instantly awakening Gwen's tense nerves. Knowing better than to talk, she chose to accelerate, and Gwen quickly approached the lobby on the first floor. Clinging to the ceiling of the towering lobby on the first floor, Gwen saw Dr. Octopus and Wild Demon Vine engaged in a great battle below. The mechanical arms collided with the plant vines one after another, and the muffled collision sounds were endless. Recognizing the Wild Demon Vine, a hint of joy bloomed in Gwen's eyes. He really came. With the question of, how did he come here, Gwen scanned below. She didn't notice the hole connecting to the ground in the corner. Her attention was completely attracted by the corpses of the police officers. Some of the police officers were even split in half by the mechanical arms, dying without a complete corpse. The gate was locked, and the trapped citizens hid in the corner, sobbing with their heads in their hands. The sorrow and despair emanating from them permeated and intensified in this closed space, almost condensing into a solid state, making it difficult for people to breathe. Seeing this, Gwen's face became calmer than ever before. This is the true face of this city. But, with a firm look in her eyes, Gwen looked at Wild Demon Vine. At least the evil here is about to be subdued. Gwen had no doubt that Wild Demon Vine would win against Dr. Octopus. At this time, the confrontation between Wild Demon Vine and Dr. Octopus ended. Gwen saw that Wild Demon Vine was panting slightly in embarrassment. Dr. Octopus raised his chin, with a smile on his face that belonged only to the victor. Her heart suddenly sank, and Gwen widened her eyes. How is this possible? Gwen frowned, muttering inwardly that this shouldn't be happening. How could someone as powerful as Wild Demon Vine be at a disadvantage? Seeing Wild Demon Vine turn to look out the window, Gwen had a flash of inspiration, realizing the key issue. Could it be that the lack of sunlight is weakening this plant person's mutant abilities? Ha ha ha. Dr. Octopus's triumphant and sinister laughter echoed in the hall. You can't stop me. Wild Demon Vine reluctantly withdrew his gaze, disdainfully sneering at Dr. Octopus, who wants to stop a scientist who is destined to fail. Dr. Octopus was stunned for a moment before flying into a rage. Shut up. I will definitely succeed. I will become the greatest scientist in the world. As for these people and you. His gaze swept over the police corpses, finally landing on Wild Demon Vine. Dr. Octopus opened his arms and said softly, "It's all a necessary evil." Just like during World War II, the Allied forces used the sacrifice of countless soldiers to achieve victory over the Nazis. As he spoke, Dr. Octopus closed his eyes in intoxication. History will give me the evaluation I deserve. Hearing this, the expression on Gwen's face was as strange as could be. The scariest thing in this world is a villain whose logic is self-consistent. How could a criminal who robs and kills have the confidence to cast himself as an Allied soldier? The next second, Dr. Octopus suddenly opened his eyes, his gaze filled with murderous intent. Kill all those who stand in my way. With a command, a mechanical arm split the air like a knife, heading straight for Wild Demon Vine's crown with a sharp whistling sound. Gwen's heart rose with what she saw. Fortunately, the arm was precisely stopped once again by thick vines just halfway there, and another muffled bang was heard upon impact. Seeing this, Gwen's raised shoulders dropped, and she breathed a sigh of relief. Wild Demon Vine and Dr. Octopus started another round of battle, and for a time, mechanical arms and plant vines flew everywhere. It should be impossible to determine the outcome in the short term. Judging this, Gwen turned her attention to the trapped citizens and the tightly locked door. Confirming that Dr. Octopus hadn't noticed her, Gwen took a deep breath and crawled over to start the rescue work. Faced with the locked door that Dr. Octopus had damaged, Gwen used her strength advantage to tear the door open again directly with her hands along the seam. Under Spider-Man's hand gesture guidance, the trapped crowd bent over and left one after another. Throughout the entire process, Gwen demonstrated extremely high professional qualities, efficient and silent. But most of the trapped citizens were ordinary people, and it was impossible to prevent them from making noise. Initially, the sound of objects falling to the ground didn't attract Dr. Octopus's attention, as he assumed it was caused by the battle. But hearing the continuous, moving sobs, Dr. Octopus couldn't help but turn his head. When he saw Spider-Man hindering him again, he immediately flew into a thunderous rage. "It's you again, you fool little bug." The rescue work completed, Gwen took a running start, used the wall to leap, and returned to the ceiling. New York's good neighbor is here to catch criminals again. With the crowd evacuated, Gwen's tone became lively. Looking at the Wild Demon Vine in front of him and Spider-Man on the ceiling above him, Dr. Octopus gritted his teeth, and a chill floated out from between his teeth. For him, dealing with two superheroes at the same time was also strenuous. Hearing this, Dr. Octopus didn't say anything, but Jomo's reaction was huge. "You go catch criminals in prison. There are criminals in prison. Why are you always staring at me for no reason?" Dr. Octopus was speechless. Thinking about it carefully, he realized that this logic made sense. Where are there the most criminals? Definitely in prison. Gwen understood that Jomo was talking about the time she caught him stealing a wallet. But she couldn't be cheeky about it. Because she saw that Wild Demon Vine was full of holes. Green juice was gushing out as if it were free. Her just relaxed nerves tightened to the extreme again, and Gwen's face began to turn pale. Is his injury so serious? That's not right, his ability has a strong self-healing ability. He can even be resurrected after death. Then what is this, why? As her thoughts progressed, Gwen's brain quickly thought. Without even a second, her body suddenly shook, and Gwen's expression changed drastically. She could easily think that Wild Demon Vine's self-healing ability had a limit. Dr. Octopus's speed of destruction exceeded his own repair speed, so Wild Demon Vine's injuries couldn't heal. Gwen suddenly felt surprised. That is to say, if the attacks are too fast, is it still possible to kill him? The subsequent development of the situation confirmed Gwen's guess. Without attacks, Wild Demon Vine healed after 2 or 3 seconds. Without thinking more, Gwen prepared to join the battle. Punishing evil and promoting good is her job, and she can't let Otto face danger alone. Aiming at Dr. Octopus's flesh, Gwen lowered her voice. What are you planning to do? In this situation, with 2 people working together, it would definitely be best for one person to restrain the mechanical arms and the other to attack Dr. Octopus's body. They needed to communicate to divide the work. Jomo raised his forearm and reached out to stop her. This is none of your business. Huh. Gwen looked over in confusion. He can't win in a one-on-one fight, so why doesn't he need her? Moreover, why did he release his ability? Looking at Jomo remove Wild Vine status, who released Wild Demon Vine state and returned to his human body, Gwen's eyes widened even more. Jomo scratched his head and let out a sigh towards Dr. Octopus. Frankly speaking, the only reason Wild Demon Vine was injured just now was Four-Armed Overlord. If there was no Four-Armed Overlord, only Wild Demon Vine. Facing Dr. Octopus, Jomo would definitely have to use his brain to fight, and wouldn't stand still like a silly boy, fighting the opponent head-on. But he has Four-Armed Overlord. With Four-Armed Overlord, is there still a need to train Wild Demon Vine's combat skills? Quickly unlock it and bring Four-Armed Overlord up is the right way. Wild Demon Vine. Forget about contacting him, I'm afraid Four-Armed Overlord will misunderstand. But what Jomo didn't expect was that the combat experience points needed to unlock Four-Armed Overlord would be so random. Hitting Gwen 3 times unlocked Wild Demon Vine. But it took hundreds of confrontations with Dr. Octopus to reach 100%. Sometimes it increases by 3%, and sometimes it's 0.3%. These combat experience points are too random. But fortunately, it has been unlocked. This is also the benefit of the stupid watch. There is no transformation time limit after unlocking. And it doesn't force manual transformation. The corners of Jomo's mouth turned up in a curve. Dr. Octopus also smiled happily. Originally, he was under pressure to fight 2 enemies alone, but now the opposite team is at odds, and one person has voluntarily released his mutant ability, indirectly withdrawing from the battle. If there is only Spider-Man, Dr. Octopus can think of 120 ways to kill her. But before that, Dr. Octopus's eyes changed suddenly, fierce and sinister. Towards Jomo in his human state, the mechanical arm struck again. Of course, he would seize this opportunity to kill him first. Gwen's face changed drastically, and she quickly leapt and pounced towards Jomo, preparing to block this blow for him. This blow could split a police officer in half. If Jomo was hit, he would definitely die. At the same time, Gwen couldn't help but greet Dr. Octopus in her heart. In her opinion, Jomo releasing his mutant ability, changing the situation from a 2-on-1 to a 1-on-1, was indirectly giving Dr. Octopus a way out. But how could this Dr. Octopus be so vicious? Instead, he wanted to take this opportunity to kill him. But in response, Jomo just smiled slightly and silently recited a sentence in his heart. Four-Armed Overlord. He plans to hone the Four-Armed Overlord fighting skills. This process will be very cruel. Of course, for Dr. Octopus. My body is far stronger than an ordinary human's, no problem. Gwen, lunging forward, braced her hands on Jomo's shoulders, her back to Dr. Octopus. She was confident she could take the hit with her torso and survive. Well, it would probably leave her badly injured. The instant Gwen's hands landed on Jomo's shoulders, she felt his body ballooning. In a flash, before she could see what was happening, a huge hand pressed her head against a rock-hard chest. Powerless, Gwen hung from her master's chest like a kitten. Bang! The familiar muffled impact exploded beside her ear. Pitch-black vision made Gwen jump. That sound, it's like a mechanical arm being blocked by plant vines. The muscle sandwich of arms and chest nearly squeezed the breath out of her. She wriggled her head free and looked. Her blood ran cold. Before her wasn't Otto's green plant person, but a red behemoth. With 4 eyes. Where did this thing come from? Startled, Gwen shoved hard and craned her neck, trying to break free of 4-armed overlord embrace. His hand slid from her head to her back, that simple hold made her struggles futile. 4-armed overlord looked down, raised a brow, and grinned. Don't be scared, I'm one of the good guys. The familiar voice stunned Gwen. Otto. How did he turn into this? Looking closer, she realized the muffled thud wasn't plant vines meeting metal arms. It was metal arm colliding with 4-armed overlord left upper arm. A blow that could split a person in half had been shrugged off with a casual lift of his shoulder. Realizing this, Gwen parted her lips, eyes unfocused, her brain crashed. Staring at him, she murmured, this red giant's stats, aren't they a bit too strong? The smile vanished. The name's 4-armed overlord. With that, he unceremoniously dumped her aside. Landing in a picture-perfect mermaid pose, the dazzling teen watched his muscular back, speechless. He really has 4 arms. Across the hall, Dr. Octopus was equally stunned, retracting his arms to size up 4-armed overlord, not daring to move rashly. Normally a mutant only has 1 ability, how is this guy displaying a second? Whoever you are, whatever you are. 4-armed overlord clenched 2 fists and smashed them together with a soft crunch. Remembering he had 2 more arms, he repeated the motion, another crack echoed. All 4 fists squeezed tighter, joints popping like firecrackers. Seeing his battle-crazed grin, Dr. Octopus felt an inexplicable panic. Next part's gonna hurt. With that, 4-armed overlord stomped and shattered the marble floor, leaping high. Midair, his left 2 arms drew back in perfect sync. His nearly 3.7 meters frame cast Dr. Octopus into shadow. It was like a mythic oil painting of a descending god king, the sheer pressure made hearts tremble. Dr. Octopus flinched, instinctively stepping back. Then a chill from the chip at the back of his skull rekindled his will to survive. Snarling, he lashed out with both human arms. Kill him. At the command, the 4 mechanical tentacles snapped taut and speared forward, converging to pierce 4-armed overlord body. The arms had been designed to assist Otto in delicate experiments. Besides precision, they packed immense strength. Dr. Octopus was confident of that. 2 arms had once beaten Spider-Man till even her own mother wouldn't recognize her. All 4 together, this 4-armed overlord corpse would be airborne in seconds. In a blink, 4-armed overlord met the spearing arms face to face. Without hesitation, he punched, both left fists shot out. Twin impacts boomed. Dr. Octopus, limbs limp, was hurled backward, blasting a hole in the wall before crumpling to a stop. Before he could even process what happened, he was stuck in the wall, unconscious. The 4 mechanical arms hung as limp as noodles, unable to stiffen again. Instantly the hall fell dead silent. Gwen, witnessing everything, stood dumbstruck, mind blank. That punch. Wait, those 2 punches, had instantly KO'd Dr. Octopus. Science major Gwen easily grasped the physics. The force had traveled through the metal arms into Dr. Octopus's body, knocking him out cold. What she hadn't expected was that it only took 1 shot. Just 1 blow from 4-armed overlord had instantly dropped the man who could pin her effortlessly. No way. Exactly how much power did 4-armed overlord possess? At that moment 4-armed overlord feet landed solidly on the floor. Watching his back, Gwen swallowed hard, a shiver running through her. She realized he still had another pair of arms, those 2 fists definitely weren't his full strength. If he unleashed everything, gulp, another Hulk. Brows knit, Gwen felt the situation spiraling into absurdity. Taking a deep breath, she composed herself. Since he's out cold, I'll go get the police to arrest him. She hadn't turned when Jomo cut in. No, he's not unconscious yet. Under that playful gaze, Dr. Octopus slowly opened resentful eyes. Clutching his chest, he struggled out of the wall. 4-armed overlord lifted his chin. Only the 2 of us left on the field. Come on, a real one-on-one man-to-man fight. Chin lowered, Dr. Octopus glared through clenched teeth. He was out of options. He'd hoped to play dead and look for an opening, now exposed, he had to risk everything. The limp mechanical arms twitched, slowly regaining strength, the air turned thick with murderous tension again. Gwen rubbed her chin, sensing something off. He said only 2 people are left on the field. Then, pointing at herself, eyes wide, Gwen exclaimed, "Am I not a person?" Four-armed overlord glanced over and waved like shooing a child, voice weary, "Go stand to the side for now. Fighting while you're here and fighting while you're not are two different things." Adopting a combat stance toward Dr. Octopus, Gwen shot back, "I have to remind you, Mr. Otto. A super criminal fighting for his life is terrifying. Having a helper around would really help you." Four-armed overlord curled his lips in disdain. What could a fledgling Spider-Man possibly help with? Next up was his personal training session for four-armed overlord combat techniques. If she got careless, she might end up accidentally hurt by him. Oh well, tilde. A cornered beast is terrifying indeed. Dr. Octopus had no way out, he could only fight to the death. With a snarl on his twisted face, his 4 mechanical arms sparked back to life and began to whirl. At a glance, their force had actually increased rather than diminished. The mechanical arms possessed their own consciousness, they would protect their master. "I will become the greatest scientist in the world. The Nobel Prize isn't even worthy to be my stepping stone. No one can stop me." The 4 mechanical arms flailing in tandem with Dr. Octopus's roar perfectly fit the image of a mad scientist. Gwen tensed, ready for battle. Even though the odds favored her side, and that the four-armed overlord alone could handle it, Gwen still knew the principle that a lion uses full force even on a rabbit. For safety's sake, she couldn't leave the entire situation to the four-armed overlord. Who knew if some hidden weakness might be exposed and seized for a comeback? Much like how Wild Demon Vine feared fire and had limited regeneration. Who could tell whether this big guy had some subtle vulnerability? Both public and private prudence called for caution. Too many had already died, let's not add another corpse. Using his head, Jomo naturally wouldn't hand the initiative to the enemy. While Gwen was still on guard, the four-armed overlord had already charged forward. Boom boom boom. Each heavy footfall made the ground quake. Arg. Seeing this, Dr. Octopus's eyes reddened, nearly crazed. "You fooled thing." Employing his only means of attack, the mechanical arm stabbed at the four-armed overlord again. This time, however, the overlord neither blocked nor struck, he simply caught each arm in a massive hand. 4 versus 4, perfectly matched. With the arms subdued, Dr. Octopus desperately willed them to break free. He strained until his facial muscles contorted and his complexion paled, yet the 4 mechanical limbs still couldn't budge an inch. Failing that, Dr. Octopus felt his heart sink like a stone, terror leaking from his eyes. 32 tons. The number suddenly surfaced in his mind. 1 mechanical arm could burst forth with 8 tons, 4 arms equaled 32. The four-armed overlord could actually resist 32 tons of explosive force. As if realizing something, his pupils shrank and he hurriedly denied it. No. To suppress them so easily, the overlord's strength must far exceed 32 tons. In the blink of an eye, the supposedly unkillable plant person had become the titanic four-armed overlord. Dr. Octopus desperately wanted to ask, just what kind of monster was Jomo? Yet clearly, another question now deserved his attention. What did the four-armed overlord intend to do with him? Having firmly caught the four arms and sensing their continued resistance, the overlord pivoted with their force and slammed downward. Raw power flipped the four arms 180 degrees, hurling them skyward. Dr. Octopus's face turned deathly pale. With a cry of dismay, he felt his body lose all control and sail through the air. Using the arms, maximum extension as radius, he smashed through a massive support pillar and a concrete doorway. Like a meteor, he crashed, blasting a huge hole in the stairwell outside. Dust and rubble gushed up from the crater, swallowing Dr. Octopus. All in a split second, Gwen blinked in stunned disbelief. Before she could recover, the overlord again swung the 4 captured arms in the opposite direction. With the arms offering no further resistance, he repeated the maneuver without even turning, pure brute force. Bang! A crater was smashed into the hall floor. Then the stairwell, then the hall again. Bang! Bang! The impacts came so fast the 2 collisions sounded almost simultaneous. After a dozen such blows, Dr. Octopus's face was ruined and blood streamed from his 7 orifices before the overlord finally stopped. Releasing the arms and dusting his hands, the Overlord cast a contemptuous sneer at the motionless Dr. Octopus below. Pathetic scientist. With that, the four-armed Overlord turned and strode toward the exit. Gwen, staring at the possibly dead Dr. Octopus, remained stunned. She had personally experienced 32 tons of force. But to see someone casually overpower that much strength and fling the foe about like a chick, it was a first. Recalling her own fight with Wild Demon Vine, Gwen felt a chill down her spine. Only now was she certain Jomo truly hadn't wanted to kill her. Put simply, she couldn't have withstood the four-armed Overlord. Right. Slapping her forehead, Gwen hurried in pursuit. The instant she stepped forward, several gunshots rang out. Her worst fear had come true. The police had mistaken the four-armed Overlord for a criminal and opened fire. Stop shooting. As the gunfire intensified, Gwen shouted anxiously and quickened her pace. Spider-Man's familiar voice worked at once. The officers instantly ceased fire. Leaping through the swirling dust to land beside the Overlord, Gwen explained, "He's my friend, the real criminal's been subdued." The officers exchanged awkward glances in uneasy silence. So, they'd just been blasting an ally. Hiss. But the police hadn't done it on purpose. Thick smoke had hidden everything, revealing only a silhouette. Seeing four arms, they'd naturally assumed it was Dr. Octopus. The reason the gunfire grew frantic was simple. Bullets ricocheted harmlessly off the four-armed Overlord body. And once he stepped from the smoke, his bizarre appearance had startled many officers into emptying their clips in panic. Some kept squeezing the trigger of already empty pistols, gasping for breath. Others stood silent, faces conflicted. So, what now? Before the captain could apologize, the four-armed Overlord inhaled deeply and spread all four arms straight out. Having gathered power, he clapped the four palms together. Before anyone grasped what he was doing, the officers in front were blasted several meters back by the shockwave. Parked police cars skidded aside, clearing a path. The terrified cops muttered over and over, "That's not human." Even Gwen, who had seen his strength, couldn't help twitching at the sight. A mere clap had generated a gale force wind, hardly human. Still, with power like that he'd make one heck of a firefighter. The bullets hadn't hurt him, they'd felt like tickles. This prank was payback enough. Crouching, the Overlord prepared a different move for his exit. Reading his intent and eyeing the bullet dust on his skin, Gwen clicked her tongue in awe. "You're probably the strongest mutant I've ever met." Totally defenseless, yet bullets bounced off his body. If that didn't make him the strongest mutant, Gwen didn't know what would. The Overlord defense was every bit as monstrous as his strength. Hearing this, the Overlord glanced sideways at Gwen, words on the tip of his tongue. Gwen didn't understand, but Jomo did. At this stage, four-armed Overlord was the mightiest fighter she knew. But once she encountered those mages, or the folk of Asgard, Jomo doubted she'd still think so. In New York, Dr. Octopus counted for something. In the Marvel Universe, what was he? A small fry. No, before Dormammu or the Ancient One, he didn't even qualify as a small fry. Thinking of Dormammu, Jomo sighed inwardly. "Please, just stay away. I'm the wrong party here." With a leap, the four-armed Overlord vaulted dozens of meters and bounded swiftly away. Left behind, Gwen gazed after him and let out a long, wistful sigh. Where on earth am I supposed to find him a place to stay? Changed into casual clothes, Gwen hugged her backpack and walked with her head lowered. Reaching a corner, she suddenly stopped. Pressed against the wall, Jomo stood beside her, hands in pockets. "Where to?" Without raising her head, Gwen clenched her teeth. "To my place." Gwen's dad is the police director, and their home is a standard upper-middle-class villa. Though the house is big, she still can't openly invite a man to stay under her father's nose. First floor corner. Lifting the rug, a creak sounded as she pulled open the trapdoor to the underground room. Gwen pointed her chin at the dark stairs below, tense. "I'm worried Dad will find out, so I can only stash you here." Jomo stepped in reluctantly. The underground room looked a bit shabby, but still within his expectations. The spacious basement had been turned into a storage area. Warm lights lit a distant corner, a simple folding bed set up and glaringly obvious. Jomo walked over and plopped down. His butt sank and then bounced back as hoped. "Not bad, you put thought into it." He glanced sideways and muttered, would be better if the bedding weren't pink. Pink damages my manliness. Ignoring the complaint, Gwen hauled storage boxes, over a dozen, stacking them into a wall that blocked the bed. With nothing else to do, Jomo flopped onto the bed, sprawling as his body gradually relaxed. First the transmigration, then 2 tough battles. This day had drained him physically and mentally. He'd never been this exhausted in his life. Before he could relax 2 seconds, the faint scent from the bedding hit him. Jomo's eyes snapped open again. Original flavor. He twisted his head in shock. Gwen, have you used these before? Gwen rolled her eyes. They've been washed. She turned and walked to the entrance, looking back to see the boxes hiding the bed perfectly, and breathed a sigh of relief. Once he switches off the bedside lamp, even if Dad comes down he won't notice him. The two busied themselves separately. Jomo stared at the bedding, then buried his face in it with regret. Why'd you wash them? Soon Gwen's footsteps faded. After the basement door opened and closed, silence returned. Jomo said nothing about it. No need for him to ask. Holding Gwen's biggest secret, she'd care more about his well-being than he did. After all, she feared that if Jomo got unhappy, he'd grab a megaphone and broadcast Spider-Man's secret on the streets. She couldn't kill to shut him up, so she had to appease him properly. Jomo recalled a line from that movie. What was it? Senior bro can milk this secret for life tilde. Sure enough, before long Gwen returned hugging a huge bag of food. Lying on his back, Jomo glanced over. The paper bag still had a receipt, freshly bought. Starving, he could only give a mental thumbs up. Not bad, she knew he hadn't eaten and went to buy food. Yet seeing her unhurried pace, Jomo decided to apply some pressure. In a weak voice he chanted, U.S. New York, U.S. New York, the best neighbors quit the show. Hero Spider-Man's no good, drinks, gambles, owes $350 million, ran off with his sister-in-law. Gwen's face changed. She hurried over, voice cracking. Stop. Dad's almost home. Jomo stared at the ceiling, unmoved. I've got no choice, trading gossip for wages. Secrets worth hundreds, now all $20, come get your bargains. Don't. She freed a hand, pulled a French loaf from the bag, and produced the brightest smile of her life, offering the baguette. See, I went to buy you food, I didn't abandon you. Gentle words, sweet smile, eyes glistening with imminent tears. At this moment Gwen was the picture of a delicate beauty who'd burst into tears at a word. Who could resist the urge to protect her? Whether truly moved or not, Jomo shut up and looked again. His gaze skipped the baguette and landed on a white takeout box peeking from the bag. He sniffed the meaty aroma. Seeing Gwen distracted, he mindlessly resumed. Gwen, you're heartless, I slaved half a year, no pay, no pay. Hearing her name, Gwen nearly cried for real. Her dad would be back any second, what if he heard? A flash of inspiration. Noticing Jomo's stare, she quickly took out the box of roast meat and handed it over. Opened, it was stuffed with grilled sausages, ribs, and beef. Steaming, glistening, juices seeping between the cuts. Return my blood and sweat money, return my. The sight silenced him. He sprang up, grabbed the box and a plastic fork, and devoured the meat. With meat like this, who wants bread? Low EQ move there, Gwen. Crisis averted. Gwen sniffed back her tears and exhaled in relief. Alive, hell, it feels good. A bite of roast, a bite of pizza, then a slurp of ice-cold cola. Gwen sat on the bed's edge, watching Jomo gorge himself, and gradually calmed down. Inside, she was speechless. Who'd believe the strongest mutant in New York is this guy? Can't even eat unless food's delivered to his mouth. Feet off the floor, her brain rebooted to high gear. Suddenly she spotted a loophole. If Jomo wanted to ruin her, he'd have exposed her identity already. Since he hadn't, he must want something else. So before he gets it, he shouldn't spill her secret. His goal should be hiding in New York without revealing who he is. After a mental storm, Gwen nearly guessed the truth. One thing she missed. Jomo had no grand plan, he just wanted free food and lodging. She spoke solemnly. Otto, let's make a deal. Behind the food box, Jomo lifted only his eyes. Keep my secret, and I'll provide for your daily needs. Jomo buried his face in the food and resumed. Gwen, you're heartless, return my, blood and sweat money. Seeing him wield her weakness again, Gwen looked away disgusted, her guess felt spot on. He won't blurt out her secret easily. Because nobody else would give him shelter and food. Next she listed the rules. Her dad's schedule, turn off the light if anyone comes, she'd deliver meals regularly, etc. Jomo mumbled agreement, mouth full. He swept through the food like a whirlwind. Once finished, he patted his belly, satisfied. Full and content, of course it's time to tease the girl Tilda. Jomo turned to Gwen, dead serious, bringing me food and drink. Gwen, do you like me? Want to marry me? Gwen shot to her feet, ready to commit murder. Like you. If you weren't blackmailing me, who'd bother with you? Seriously. Before leaving, she didn't forget to switch off the basement light. Only the bedside lamp lit the dim underground room now. Rubbing his belly, Jomo lay down contentedly. Looking around, he raised an eyebrow. Forgot to ask for a laptop to game. Crap. He got up and searched. Finding nothing to kill time with, he turned off the light and went to sleep. She totally has a crush on me and wants to marry me. HMPH, wicked woman, after my looks. With that grumble, Jomo closed his eyes and drifted off. He didn't know how long he'd slept when a chilling sensation jolted him awake, drenched in sweat. Looking down, the black pentagram on his wrist was already glowing. Instinct screamed, Dormammu's about to freaking descend. Same-day delivery. That fast. Jomo felt as if something was about to surge out of his body. Control over his body was quickly seized, and his consciousness rapidly faded. His body involuntarily floated up, bulging veins spread from his neck to his forehead, his eyes and mouth were forced wide open, and masses of black chi roared and surged out from them. The black chi gathered, filling the ceiling and swallowing the remaining light. Although the sensation of pain was stripped away, Jomo could still feel his body being torn apart. Just as his consciousness was about to vanish, his pupils shifted down. Jomo's other hand struggled to lightly touch the clumsy watch. The dial popped up, and he switched to Wild Demon Vine before pressing down. Immediately, the Wild Demon Vine transformation succeeded, its self-healing ability took over his body, and it waged an impossible fight against the dark magic. Jomo's sense of suffocation intensified. Even in the state of Wild Demon Vine, which possessed extremely high tenacity, he still felt his neck was about to be ripped off. As the Lord of the Dark Dimension, whom even Ancient One feared, Dormammu was not to be trifled with. The Wild Demon Vine's abilities were completely incapable of resisting him. Even fighting with all its might, it could only manage to maintain vital signs. It was not hard to imagine that if things progressed smoothly, Dormammu would tear open Jomo's body and step out. What should he do? Death approached, and while thinking of a countermeasure, Jomo still didn't forget to trash talk, though his voice was hoarse, as if his vocal cords had been cut by glass. If I die, you'll really be stuck eating vegetables. How is Wild Demon Vine not a vegetable? But fool it. I haven't even been transmigrated for a day, and I'm going to die. Just as the crisis intensified, the dark magic suddenly vanished without warning. The Wild Demon Vine body immediately dropped back onto the bed, and the underground room instantly returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. Quickly repairing his body, Jomo transformed back into a human, clutching his neck with one hand and gasping for air. Of course, he knew it wasn't his trash talk that stopped Dormammu. Clearing his throat with 2 dry coughs, Jomo looked up at the ceiling. It was probably Ancient One. The Sanctum Sanctorum is still protecting Earth. In the night sky, a golden magic circle flashed and disappeared instantly. Jomo looked down and saw the black pentagram still on his wrist, feeling extremely depressed. Come when you want, leave when you want, do you think this is a public restroom? Covering the pattern with his sleeve, Jomo sat on the bed in a daze, but what should I do next? Finding Ancient One is unreliable, she'll die soon. After much thought, Jomo decided he had to rely on getting stronger himself. Otherwise, by the time Doctor Strange brings back news of successful negotiations with Dormammu, he would only be able to, like it in the state of ground meat. X-Man is probably a bit difficult. I haven't thought of anyone who can unlock that old man. Jomo scratched his head. Forget it. Even a small fly is meat. It seems I'll just have to unlock whatever I can. I must secretly become stronger and shock everyone. He decided to act immediately. So what does he need most right now? Information. I wonder if the noise just now woke them up. In his wild demon vine form, Jomo crawled towards the darkness of the stairs. Seeing that it was 2 o'clock in the morning, Jomo wriggled from the living room towards the rooms, searching one after another. In the study, Jomo successfully found a computer. Box weapon, activate. Using the two-finger typing method, Jomo entered the keywords, astronaut, racer, fire. He searched for the name Johnny Storm and then looked up his current situation. Having obtained the necessary information, the spreading vines opened the window. After shutting down the computer, the wild demon vine crawled out like sludge. Johnny Storm, formerly an astronaut and racer, encountered cosmic ray during a space mission, causing his body structure to mutate and granting him the ability to control fire. Later, he and his similarly mutated mission companions formed the superhero organization Fantastic Four, and his personal nickname is Human Torch. If he can't trigger the Fireman unlock condition, then no one else can. Outside the circus camp. Like Whack-A-Mole, the wild demon vine kept popping its head out to determine its location. Seeing Johnny's poster, he confirmed he hadn't come to the wrong place. This must be it. Pulling his head back, wild demon vine continued moving underground. Inside the warehouse, Johnny leaned against the wall, drinking beer and admiring his motorcycle. Tipping his head back to gulp down some liquor, Johnny smiled. I can't find a better job than this. Now that he had lost his astronaut job, he made a living by riding his motorcycle through rings of fire. Of course, occasionally he would still transform into Human Torch to fight criminals. Johnny was quite satisfied with his current life situation. The work was exciting, and occasionally female fans would offer themselves up. How great. At that moment, a strange noise came from outside the warehouse, catching Johnny's attention. Shua 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 tilde. Following the sound, Johnny wondered, at this hour, the visitors should have all left. Hearing things. Or the wind. Glancing around and seeing no one, Johnny shook his head, stopped thinking about it, and continued drinking his liquor. 2 seconds later, the sound rang out again, and it was closer. Shua 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 tilde. Johnny put down the beer and turned to face the door. This time he was sure it wasn't auditory hallucination, and there was no wind here. Someone was invading. His narrowed eyes scanned the darkness in front of him, but Johnny still couldn't find anyone. His ears pricked up, searching for information. In the deadly silent night, any sound was particularly noticeable. Shua 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 tilde. The sound came again. After hearing it, Johnny instinctively took a step back and lowered his head, determining the sound came from underground. His heart involuntarily tightened. What the hell? Did someone dig a tunnel all the way here? Being able to sneak within about 10 meters of him before being discovered was enough to make Johnny extremely vigilant, and the hairs on his arms stood up straight due to tension. Facing the spot where the sound disappeared into the ground, Johnny shouted, "Who's there?" A few seconds later, a nearly inaudible voice came from beneath the ground. The voice was so soft it sounded like it was produced by gas rather than vocal cords. Keep your voice down tilde, don't let anyone find us tilde. I'm just a pure passerby tilde. A muscle twitched near Johnny's eye. A pure passerby. Johnny quickly calmed himself. Why are you here? Seeing that Johnny was still loud, the voice from underground got anxious, but still controlled its volume. I told you, keep it down. Don't let anyone find us tilde. Johnny's chest rose and fell rapidly. He quickly closed his eyes and took a few deep breaths. Why the hell does it feel like this guy is here for a secret rendezvous? If that's the case, fine. Johnny cleared his throat, bent over, and imitated the voice, a posture that made him feel utterly ashamed. That's too effeminate. So what are you here for, huh tilde? What? Speak up. I can't hear you tilde. Johnny straightened up in a burst of anger, his demeanor changing completely. Godfoolit. I asked you what you're here for. After disappearing for a few seconds and confirming no outsiders were present, the wild demon vine popped its head back out. Oh tilde, I'm here to fight you tilde. You know, to hone my combat skills and stuff. To see the plant head sticking out of the ground 3 meters in front of him, Johnny had to bend over again. Looking at the wild demon vine's unique appearance, Johnny's features twisted in confusion and strangeness. Is this also a mutant? Why is it so ugly? Nevertheless, Johnny decisively agreed to this request. Being so ugly, it was inevitable to feel inferior, and of course, he'd want to hone his combat skills to protect himself from bullying. As a fellow mutant, Johnny could empathize with him on this point. The wild demon vine happily drilled out of the ground, revealing its full form. At this moment, he was certain that the human torch in front of him could indeed unlock Fire Man. Looking at Johnny's face, Wild Demon Vine asked with concern, "Do you need a shield?" Johnny put his hands on his hips and let out a chuckle. "Worry about yourself first. Don't you know the principle that plants fear fire?" Wild Demon Vine blinked its single eye. "I know." Seeing its wronged expression, coupled with the fact that he naturally countered the opponent, Johnny felt he couldn't strike too hard. He smiled confidently. "In that case, I'll let you hit me once first so you can understand the gap in our strength." Jomo was delighted. "Really?" Johnny nodded, smiling as he closed his eyes. "Really?" Fire against plant, he didn't even know how he could lose. The next second, PFF'd. Johnny was instantly punched by four-armed Overlord, spitting blood, flying backward, and rolling his eyes. What the hell? He almost crashed into the warehouse wall. Fortunately, he managed to stop by stepping on the brakes. Johnny clutched his chest, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth, and glared fiercely at four-armed Overlord. "If I knew he was this strong, I definitely wouldn't have taken that punch. If anyone else were here, they would be wondering why Jomo has two mutant abilities. But Johnny isn't an ordinary person, he loves excitement." A heat wave rushed over, and Johnny transformed into Human Torch, his fierce eyes turning into expectant battle intent. "If you have a brain, who the hell would ride a motorcycle? It's no fun fighting if the opponent isn't strong. I will return this punch." Johnny grinned, and his fiery body slowly rose into the air. But his cool pose only lasted 3 seconds. Because his eyes were fixed on four-armed Overlord, he didn't pay attention, and with a thud, his head crashed straight into the ceiling. The smile on Johnny's face visibly froze before returning to normal. He put on an "nothing happened" attitude, but his body was still honestly lowering his altitude. Combat experience plus 5%. The fireman's toes lit up. Receiving feedback from that punch, four-armed Overlord further provoked him by waving his hand. "Come on, little Jing Shenhuo." Johnny's competitive spirit was completely aroused, and he was about to attack subconsciously, but he calmly glanced at his beloved motorcycle. After thinking about it, he pointed a finger and only fired a thumb-thick ray of flame. Four-armed Overlord cooperated with a backflip to dodge and leave the warehouse, arriving at the outside camp. He came to unlock alien heroes, not to make enemies. Johnny quickly flew out to follow. Seeing Johnny about to attack in the air, four-armed Overlord couldn't help but reach out. "Wait. Don't you know that if you learn it, your flames will hit people 100%. What is that? It's fire combat technique." Seeing four-armed Overlord heartbroken expression, Johnny frowned in confusion. "What is fire combat technique?" Paired with gestures, four-armed Overlord earnestly explained, "This is an exclusive secret technique that I have improved based on gunfighting technique. Simply put, at the instant the flame is fired, our wrist shakes rapidly. This shaking gives the bullet a horizontal acceleration, forming an arc. The faster the wrist shakes, the more we get the perfect arc we need. This is fire fighting technique." His eyeballs moved upward, and after deducing it in his mind, Johnny vaguely saw a flame ray that would turn after being fired. Realizing he was being tricked, Johnny immediately became furious. "Are you kidding me? He was an astronaut, after all, so he has basic scientific knowledge. Fire combat technique improved from gunfighting technique. Come, tell me, what bullet can turn after being fired? Physics doesn't exist anymore, does it?" Four-armed Overlord sighed. "I'll buy you some melon seeds later." Johnny laughed again, thinking that was more like it, knowing to apologize after tricking someone. However, now is not the time to make friends, the fire in his heart hasn't been released yet. Pulling his hands back and then pushing them forward violently, Johnny released a huge pillar of fire from his palms that was completely disproportionate to his size. Four-armed Overlord bent his body, using his four hands to protect his head and block. His powerful defense once again came into play. His body was completely swallowed by the pillar of fire, and Jomo only felt a little hot. At the same time, reminder messages flashed in his mind like a text message bombardment. Combat experience plus 7%. Combat experience plus 3%. Combat experience plus 5%. However, the continuous impact of the fire pillar still pushed four-armed overlord body backward, leaving a several-meter-long ditch in the ground with his feet. After outputting for a while, Johnny felt satisfied that it should be about enough, so he retracted the flames. There was no need to continue arguing with this kind of guy who was suppressed from the start and couldn't even lift his head. Thinking that this guy might beg for mercy next, Johnny felt elated, and his breathing became much smoother. Hey, that's for tricking me just now. The fire pillar dissipated, and four-armed overlord body surface was red and smoking, motionless. Johnny couldn't stop the corners of his mouth from rising as he watched. Realized the difference in strength between us. Then begged me to be gentle. The next moment, he moved his arms away from his head, and four-armed overlord grinned. Johnny frowned. He's still okay. Before Johnny could react, four-armed overlord casually grabbed a human-sized rock next to him and smashed it over. That speed and force were not at all inferior to a bullet just fired. Johnny also quickly dodged, watching the rock fly past the tip of his nose. His heart couldn't help but thump again, and the smile on his face disappeared instantly. That rock weighs at least 3 or 4 tons. To be able to throw a 3 or 4 ton rock around like that, just how strong is this guy? With amazing strength and powerful defense, Johnny's expression became serious. He finally realized that four-armed overlord was stronger than he thought. Looking back, Johnny also grinned. But so what? Can he even touch me? His hands sprayed flames again, and the two flames merged into one, the fire pillar reappearing, locking onto four-armed overlord. The flames under his feet began to burn fiercely, and Johnny in the air also began to move quickly. At a glance, it was full of the visual sense of a fire-breathing dragon. If there was a weakness of four-armed overlord, it was his movement speed, which could only reach fast, but not high speed. As long as Johnny keeps moving at high speed in the air, he really can't do anything to him. For many reasons, four-armed overlord still chose defense as the most cost-effective method. Combat experience plus 1%. Combat experience plus 0.7%. Combat experience plus 6%. This time the fire pillar was more intense, longer, and burned at 360 degrees from different angles. Johnny sneered triumphantly, not believing that he could still withstand it this time. Not forgetting that this was a playful competition, Johnny laughed loudly. If you beg for mercy, I'll let you go, how about it? In the fire pillar, Jomo's indifferent voice came, your attack. Jomo deliberately slowed down his speech, is very ordinary. Hearing this, Johnny's original worry turned into anger, and the offensive intensified again. Very ordinary. The offensive intensified, and the dazzling fire pillar emitted a rolling heat wave, illuminating the surroundings. In Jomo's mind, it was like a power bank, and the fireman's figure had lit up to his navel. After venting his emotions, Johnny felt a little unbearable. This was the first time he had used such an intense attack on a non-criminal. He couldn't guarantee that nothing would happen. Speaking with concern, Johnny's tone softened. Is that okay, buddy? Do you know how powerful I am? Under the high temperature burning, Jomo felt that his bones were about to be melted. But seeing that the progress bar had reached his neck, he still chose to grit his teeth and persevere. Is that all? Hey, like you haven't eaten. Hearing the most extreme mockery in the most indifferent tone, Johnny was stunned for 2 seconds before his eyes turned red, and he roared, okay. Haven't eaten, right? I'm going to fight you to the death. In an instant, the fire pillar, which had expanded several times, swallowed the surrounding wilderness together. In the crimson fire pillar, the figure of four-armed overlord was completely swallowed. Not knowing how long it lasted, Johnny came back to his senses and hurriedly slowed down his offensive. How is it? In the fire pillar, Jomo's trembling voice came. Oh, ordinary. Johnny almost cried after hearing this. Thinking, big brother, don't be ordinary, I can smell the aroma of roasted meat. Hurriedly stopping and taking a closer look, sure enough, four-armed overlord body surface was as red as a cooked lobster. His eyes were also so distracted that he didn't look like a living person, but the corners of his mouth still had a strange infatuated smile. An alluring aroma of grilled meat wafted around. After seeing this, Johnny was directly stunned. He seems to have been roasted by me. Afterward, Johnny slapped his forehead in annoyance, scolding himself in his heart. He is just this kind of person, just like his ability, a hot temper that ignites at the slightest provocation. This was of course an unintentional act under the influence of his emotions, but after all, he was the one who did it. Just as Johnny was collapsing and thinking about what to do next, he saw Four-Armed Overlord switch to Wild Demon Vine, and then quickly return to the Four-Armed Overlord state. Seeing that Four-Armed Overlord was unharmed and looked like nothing had happened, Johnny was stunned. Afterward, Johnny seemed like a different person, his face becoming unprecedentedly calm. His intuition told him that the guy in front of him was more dangerous and powerful than he thought. Even if he really tried his best, he might not be able to win. Completely immortal. What kind of monster is he? Re-examining Four-Armed Overlord, controlling the flames under his feet, Johnny ascended to a certain height. He understood that he might not be able to defeat Four-Armed Overlord, but he also understood that Four-Armed Overlord would definitely not be able to defeat him. Nothing else, just speed. Even if he really couldn't be killed at all, he couldn't touch him. Switching to Wild Demon Vine to heal all his injuries, the infatuated smile on Four-Armed Overlord face bloomed. Fire Man, unlocked successfully. Human Torch, right. I'll tear off your headgear. Johnny, now dead serious, still refused to admit defeat. Looking down, he said flatly, "You can't touch me. Give up." He could kite the guy forever, but he couldn't hurt him either. Rather than stay stuck, better to end this fast. If they fought till dawn and someone spotted two mutants here, it would end badly for both. Of course, that was only if the other guy bowed out first. Johnny never was the surrendering type. Four-Armed Overlord tilted his head with a wicked grin. If that can't reach you, how about this? The extra arms retracted, his frame shrank, and flames erupted across his skin. As the words fell, Fire Man shot skyward, meeting Johnny eye to eye. Johnny blinked, frozen. He glanced down, then back at the blazing figure in front of him. His pupils shrank to pinpoints, terror splashed across his face as if he'd seen a ghost. He's a mutant who commands fire too. How is that possible? Johnny's mind turned to mush. He racked his brain. Had two mutants ever shared the exact same power? Seeing Johnny stare in utter bewilderment, Jomo soaked it up. This, he thought, is the treatment a protagonist deserves. Fire Man's hands slid off his thighs, his grin stiffening along with them. Right, Fire Man has no pockets. That flex failed. Requesting a redo, Johnny's mind raced while Jomo didn't interrupt. Wait. Johnny realized the key to solving a problem is spotting the key problem. The key was, if the guy had fire powers, why hadn't he used them from the start? The thought hit Johnny like a trap snapping shut. The answer wasn't hard. Either the guy was a psycho who enjoyed getting pummeled. Or, he hadn't had the power then. That closest to truth guess made Johnny's heart stop cold. Flames roared around him, yet he felt plunged into an endless icy abyss. So the guy had come to evolve his power, through him. He can actually evolve by copying someone else's ability. Reading the shock in Johnny's eyes, Jomo knew it was time to begin. Credit where it's due, Johnny still had basic judgment. Sensing Fire Man's intent, Johnny spun and fled. No, flew. He wasn't refusing the fight, he was postponing, outmaneuvering, optimizing, fighting on his own schedule. He really feared the guy might keep powering up mid-battle. But after dodging a car-sized fireball, Johnny knew he'd miscalculated. The opponent was already in perfect form. Deciding to call the others, Johnny jerked his head back. Who are you? Fire Man rolled a giant sphere of flame. I'm the backup the monkey called for. Take this. Fire escape. Great fireball jutsu. Johnny rocketed straight up to evade, black lines sliding down his forehead. Backup the monkey called for. Since when had he offended any monkeys? Recalling Jomo's earlier nonsense, Johnny mentally collapsed. What the hell had this guy been babbling about? They were both Earthlings, so why couldn't he understand a single sentence? What on earth was, flick your wrist to give bullets acceleration? And what was, the backup the monkey called for? What was all this freaking nonsense? The scene quickly became Fireman chasing and Johnny running. Fire combat technique. Fireball combat technique. Great fireball combat technique. Fireman's signature gift was flame control. Under his command the fire could literally bend. Johnny dared not strike back, glancing behind while racking his brain on how to reach the other three heroes. Spotting Fireman riding a fire cloud, Johnny's heart pounded. The guy's manipulation of flame far outclassed his. Alone, he stood no chance. Behind him, Fireman thrust both hands forward, testing another power, and shouted. Star absorbing great skill. Johnny was about to mock the corny name when everything before him slowed. Huh. Paddling in midair, Johnny plunged straight toward the ground. His power had been forcibly cancelled. As he fell, Johnny saw two columns of flame streaming from where he'd been into Fireman's palms. The guy had drained him dry. Their eyes met. Fireman flicked a tornado of fire his way. Expecting death, Johnny instead landed gently on the street. He patted himself, Mr. Fantastic's uniform intact, skin unburned. Rubbing his still perfect hair, Johnny gaped in disbelief. His mouth could have fit an entire loaf of bread. Yes, inside that flaming twister he hadn't felt the slightest heat. Zero damage, nothing at all. What the? How was that possible? That was still fire. Jomo shrugged. Calm down, learned it from some kid. But I'm better at it than he is. Heat rolled overhead. Johnny looked up to watch Fireman descend. In Johnny's eyes, the blazing figure was no longer human. He was a god. That level of control was exactly what he'd always dreamed of. Arms folded, Fireman landed in triumph. Now, who's cooler? Jomo was thrilled with his newly unlocked Fireman form. Of course, compared with Ben's Fireman, Jomo was stronger. Not because Jomo was an adult, but because. Johnny panted excitedly, circling to study Fireman. Tell me, how did you pull all that off? Jomo answered solemnly, study, relentless practice, plus a smidge of talent. Johnny blinked. Study. You only unlocked the power minutes ago, no time to study. Jomo smirked. That's why I need that smidge of talent. With it, 3 minutes of mine equal a lifetime for others. Johnny froze, eyes sparkling. A talent like that actually exists. Heart in his throat, Johnny asked gingerly, so, do you think, I might have it? Fireman gave him a sidelong glance. No. Johnny's brows shot up. You haven't even checked. Why not? The power to wield flame, Johnny craved it. Especially that harmless flame tornado relocation. To stay a superhero he had to master it. Without even looking, hands behind his back, Fireman said coolly, because your eyes aren't pure enough. Johnny stood frozen. This hinges on eye purity. Seeing Fireman turn to leave, Johnny snapped back and blocked his path. Where are you going? Fireman looked at him with mingled surprise and disgust. I need to report my destination to you. Johnny steeled himself, arms wide. You can't leave until Reed gets here. He had to tell Mr. Fantastic. Reed was smart. Let him talk to Fireman. Before someone this powerful walked free, they needed to know whose side he was on. Oh. Fireman raised an annoyed brow. And how do you plan to stop me? Johnny's gaze slid to a nearby river, duty weighing on him. He wrapped his arms around Fireman and leapt. Splash! Both plunged into the river. An instant later, Jomo received another notification. Ice Fireman perfect form unlocked. Holy crap! Ice. A pleasant surprise arrived. Jomo had meant to give Johnny a scare, yet the autumn river water unlocked another form of Fireman. At the 2-meter riverbed, Johnny wrapped his arms around Fireman and glanced sideways. As expected, the flames on Fireman were completely extinguished once submerged. So next comes his feeble struggle. Johnny clenched tighter. He wouldn't let go until Reed arrived and Fireman passed out. In this regard he was confident. He was ready to hold his breath underwater, his opponent was not. Add the natural suppression of water, and Fireman couldn't last long. As Johnny tensed for the expected struggle. 2 seconds later he saw Fireman turn and calmly meet his eyes. Frowning, Johnny looked down. Fireman's chest was slowly rising and falling. His frown deepened. Ignoring the water, Johnny stared wide-eyed in shock. When bubbles drifted from Fireman's nose, Johnny was sure he was breathing. Yes, breathing underwater. A fellow fire mutant, yet breathing underwater. Does that make sense? It's completely unscientific. The tables turned, Johnny released him in fright and swam for the bank. Now Fireman grabbed him to stop his escape. As everyone knows, Fireman can breathe in water. Johnny's scalp prickled. This guy could still talk. Ignoring the dead weight grip, Johnny thrashed upward with all his might. Frantic and powerful, his mutant physique showed its edge. However hot-headed, the physical advantage remained. Carrying Fireman, his speed scarcely slowed. Without the panic on his face, he could rival a pro swimmer. But the next second his professionalism froze. His outstretched arm locked overhead, cold stiffened him into immobility. Feeling the chill from his back, Johnny's mind blanked. Fine, a fireman who can breathe underwater and throw ice. What else can I say? I'm out. On shore Johnny crouched, hugging himself and shivering. Ice Fireman stood before him, yet Johnny dared not use his power. Jomo interrogated, "Who is Reed? Give me the nickname." Johnny glanced up, then looked away. "Mr. Fantastic." Jomo understood. Foreign names are hard to remember, only nicknames stick. So you want him to bring people to hunt me down, huh? You schemers all have filthy hearts. Dude, if I meant to set you up I'd have called the police ages ago. Jomo's face changed. Rubbing his chin he said, "Oh, right, true. Then why did you call him? To ask which side you're on, superhero or villain." Standing, Johnny's eyes lit, "And if possible, invite you to join the Fantastic Four." "Man, you're insanely strong." Jomo sneered. Two bluffs and the guy spilled everything. Jomo nodded inwardly. For now the Fantastic Four meant no harm. They wouldn't derail their plotline for him. Once he left, their paths likely wouldn't cross again. With that judgment, Jomo ended his musings. Ice Fireman reverted to Fireman. Jomo corrected sternly. "Actually I'm not strong at all. No need to notice me." A flame tornado whisked them back to the circus camp several kilometers away. Johnny was too awestruck to speak. Not strong. Watching Fireman survey the warehouse, Johnny felt a trace of fear. To him, the greatest power wasn't flame control. It was the ability to keep evolving. After one fight, he'd evolved an even stronger flame. Falling into cold river water, his flame had evolved into ice fire. If this keeps up, he'll become the most powerful mutant in the entire world. No. In the entire universe. With a monster of that caliber, how could he not want to recruit him? But, what is this? Johnny noticed the clumsy watch logo on Fireman's chest. He was sure he'd seen it on Wild Demon Vine and the Four-Armed Overlord too. Could this be the source of his powers? Or maybe the emblem of some organization he belongs to? While Johnny was thinking about that, Fireman suddenly shouted, "Crap, transformation time's up." With that, Jomo reverted to Wild Demon Vine. His mood flipping like a roller coaster, Johnny blurted, "Dude, your mutant power has a time limit." Wild Demon Vine didn't bat an eye. "Of course it does. What did you expect? You think I can just think, switch, and become whatever I want? And every form is a top-tier powerhouse with no time limit. Come on, you don't really believe I'm that broken, do you?" Johnny frowned in confusion, instinctively looking away as he replayed the fight in his head. The more he thought, the more it seemed true. The guy's powers were strong, but each form had switched out before lasting long. That matched what he'd just said. Plus Johnny recalled another convincing clue. He'd been in New York ages. If a powerhouse mutant had suddenly appeared, how could he not know? There'd been zero news reports. At that thought, Johnny's eyes twitched in disbelief. So, the guy actually isn't that strong. In that case, there's no need to call in the other three heroes. Heck, if he'd just kept running and stalled, the guy's powers would have timed out and he'd have won. Realizing this, Johnny buried his face in his hands, struggling to accept his loss. Still, he had to admit Fireman's abilities outclassed his. Seeing Johnny buy the story, Wild Demon Vine scratched his head. "First meeting and I didn't bring a gift, sorry about that." Johnny waved wearily and headed for his half-finished beer. "Thanks, but I don't need a gift." Getting the expected answer, Wild Demon Vine shyly blinked. "Great, then I'll take your gift. First time meeting, what are you giving me?" Johnny's outstretched hand froze midair. "Bro, you're really this forward?" Grabbing the beer, Johnny ground his teeth. What do you want? Under Johnny's stare, Wild Demon Vine glanced at a sleek motorcycle. Seeing it wasn't his favorite, Johnny surveyed the trashed camp and hatched a plan. You got a license. Wild Demon Vine swung onto the bike. License. Dude didn't even have a legal ID, where would a license come from? He snorted. You actually need to learn for this thing. Johnny nodded in agreement, plucked the matching key from the board behind him, and tossed it over. Along with it came his wicked grin. Let's see how you handle her. Heads up, she's a high-power brute that chews up rookies. Catching the key, Wild Demon Vine smirked and fired up the bike. The front wheel lifted, the rear tire pivoted 180 degrees, and the tank shook as the engine roared. Then watch the show. With a buzz, Wild Demon Vine tore off down the road. Once he was gone, Johnny speed dialed the police. Hello, police. I'd like to report a robbery at our circus. He set a bunch of fires, stole a motorcycle, 30-odd beers, and over $5,000 cash from the boss's drawer. Yeah, remember that motorcycle theft a while back? Eyeing his beloved bike, Johnny added, that was definitely him too. Our boss has been investigating the guy his wife's cheating with. Probably this same perp. Yup, every last crime was committed by this one guy. Name. No one had seen the guy's face, Johnny hadn't, and neither had anyone else. With secrecy that tight, Johnny could say whatever, no face, no way they'd catch him. Sun Xiaochuan. Jomo never intended to hurt Johnny. To reiterate, his goal was to unlock Fire Man, not to kill anyone. Currently, Dormammu is enough to give Jomo a headache. A smart person naturally wouldn't be foolish enough to make enemies everywhere. Complete the goal, and of course, time to leave. Late at night, Wild Demon Vine crawled out from the depths of the green belt, pulled out what it had hidden, and then sneaked back to the underground room to sleep. Watching his old man drive away, Gwen was about to close the door when her gaze fell on a dark shadow in the green belt. Her super senses told her that it was a motorcycle. Instantly, Gwen's mind flashed to the bandits reported in the morning news. Closing the door, Gwen lowered her head and walked absent-mindedly into the house. Where did the motorcycle come from? First of all, exclude her own family. If it was newly bought by a neighbor, it wouldn't be hidden in the green belt. Thinking of Jomo in the underground room, Gwen stopped. Could the thief who appeared last night be Otto? Gwen thought it was unlikely. He had been sleeping in the underground room and shouldn't have had time to run so far to steal something. However, thinking of mutant abilities, Gwen did not dispel her doubts. Currently, he is the biggest suspect. If it's really him, then it would make her too angry. Stealing something and hiding the loot at the home of her old man, the police director. If it gets out, what will happen to her old man's reputation? After Jomo walked out of the underground room, Gwen began to observe him secretly. Jomo first poked his head out and carefully looked around. Is your dad gone? Gwen said unhappily, thanks to the thief who likes petty theft, he has to work on the weekend too. Getting the answer, ignoring the content of the sentence, Jomo happily walked outside. Come on, Gwen, come here, I'll show you a treasure. Seeing Jomo walking towards the green belt, Gwen hesitated and followed. Behind the green belt. Ta-da! Jomo pointed both hands at the motorcycle, his face beaming. Look, cool or not? Startled, Gwen said, this car is yours. Yeah, someone gave it to me. How about it, cool or not? As he spoke, Jomo squatted down, happily reaching out to wipe the dirt off the motorcycle. Wouldn't he be happy to get a motorcycle for free? Johnny, you're generous enough. Awesome. Blinking her eyes to quickly digest everything, Gwen suppressed her emotions. As the director's daughter, she naturally understood that the most important thing in handling a case is evidence. Maybe this guy really has a mysterious friend in the area who gave him a motorcycle. Taking a deep breath, Gwen squeezed out a smile. Then what do you plan to do with this motorcycle next? Moving his eyeballs up, Jomo was seriously thinking. Johnny has seen this motorcycle, and if he drives it out like this, he might be discovered. Having an idea, Jomo touched the motorcycle and truthfully said, I'll repaint it first. Gwen's heart skipped a beat. Repaint it. Jomo tilted his head back and looked at the license plate. Yes, and then change the license plate. Thinking of his identity, Jomo added in a low voice, of course, a fake license plate. Jomo has no identity or driver's license, so he can't get a real one even if he wanted to. These words didn't sound right to Gwen. Repainting the car first, then changing the fake license plate. Is this the correct way for a decent person to treat a newly acquired motorcycle? Gwen was so angry that her breathing became rapid. She arranged for him to eat and live here, but on the first night of his stay, he went out to steal. Without saying a word, Gwen pounced directly on Jomo. Without using his alien hero abilities, Jomo's physical body is naturally no match for Spider-Man. After rolling around a couple of times, Gwen easily subdued him. Looking at Gwen sitting on him, forcefully pressing down on his chest with one hand, Jomo innocently raised both hands. It was inexplicable. Why was this girl suddenly so angry? Gwen was also so angry that she lost her mind. She tried to speak several times, but couldn't say a complete sentence. She could only keep taking deep breaths to adjust her emotions. Jomo didn't know if Gwen was having her period or was invaded by venom. Seeing her emotions so intense, he had no choice but to ask softly. Gwen, what's wrong? Before he could finish speaking, Gwen interrupted him with a stern rebuke. Shut up. Jomo closed his mouth aggrievedly, glanced at the torn clothes on his shoulder, sniffed in fear, and his tone was as aggrieved as a young woman being molested by a rogue. Gwen, you wouldn't be lusting after me and want to force yourself on me, would you? Closing her eyes, Gwen clenched her teeth and was finally able to say a complete sentence. Are you Sun Xiaochuan? Hearing the alias he had used last night, Jomo had an ominous feeling. Tell me what it is first. Hey, is there a difference? Yes. If it's a good thing, then I definitely did it. If it's a bad thing. Jomo's voice softened. Then it wasn't me. I'll be fooled. Standing in front of the TV, pointing at Johnny who was talking about last night's robbery, Jomo turned his head angrily. Slander. He's slandering me. Now Jomo was the one who was so angry that he couldn't speak. I treat you like a brother, and you use me to settle accounts. You sleeping with your boss's wife can also be attributed to me. Johnny. On the sofa, Gwen crossed her legs and let out an indifferent chuckle. Even the name you told me was fake. Pretend, keep pretending. Now, Gwen doesn't have a shred of trust in this rascal in front of her. She hasn't forgotten about Jomo picking up someone's wallet at the beginning. Gwen also understood that the most urgent task was to send the motorcycle back to prevent the police from finding it here. After that, Gwen gritted her teeth, and then she would settle accounts with Otto. Oh no, Sun Xiaochuan. Just as Gwen was thinking about what to do, the news on TV updated. The police found that the chain of evidence didn't match up, so they locked onto Johnny. At his place, the police found the previously stolen expensive motorcycle, and then followed the clues to determine that what this person who reported the crime said was all his own crimes. At this time, the protagonist in the news became the boss's wife, who cried and shouted that she and Johnny were true love. Gwen was directly embarrassed. Her gaze shifted from the phone to Jomo. Jomo glared at her, and Gwen subconsciously stood up after seeing it. Jomo walked over aggressively and sat down. I said, I'm innocent. Gwen scratched her head and gave an awkward smile. She really didn't expect that this guy was actually telling the truth. This was embarrassing. After cursing a few times to vent his anger, Jomo's expression gradually became strange, and his gaze subconsciously turned elsewhere, looking aimlessly. Just as Gwen was curious about what was wrong with him, Jomo looked over seriously. Gwen, do you want to continue? After speaking, Jomo took the initiative to unbutton his collar. After that, unsurprisingly, Reed, this famous rich man, bailed Johnny out. At the dinner table, Jomo devoured the food. Gwen was flipping through photos of criminals on the side. Jomo also glanced over from time to time. When Gwen was looking at Professor Lizard's photo, the figure of big steel teeth in Jomo's mind trembled slightly. But Jomo directly ignored it. There was no way around it. Who let big steel teeth have such a low presence? And he can only show his strongest state in a specific environment. Is there water in Dormammu's dark dimension? If not, Dormammu would probably turn this Westlake fish in vinegar sauce into mush with a bleep tilde sound. However, the supervillain in another photo successfully attracted Jomo's attention. Jomo asked with feigned casualness, "Are all of these your colleagues?" "Hardly." Gwen sighed. "These are criminals who haven't been caught yet." As Spider-Woman, gathering intel on supervillains is practically Gwen's daily grind. Frowning at the photo of Professor Lizard, Gwen's eyes brimmed with worry. Jomo glanced at the picture of Electro beside her hand. "Do you know their real identities?" Still staring fixedly at Professor Lizard, Gwen shook her head slightly. "Their hideouts." Gwen shook her head again. Without pressing further, Jomo lowered his head and kept eating. Listening to the clatter of cutlery, Gwen suddenly thought of something and brightened. She slowly lowered her head until it touched the table, then looked sideways at Jomo, the corners of her mouth curling in a sly grin. Sunlight danced on her sapphire eyes, making them stunningly beautiful. Noticing, Jomo only gave her a glance before refusing outright. "I'm not interested in fighting crime, I'm not teaming up with you." Gwen's smile widened and she poked his ribs, looking like a cunning fox. "I'll buy you yummy food every meal, extra sides, extra meat. Deal, buddy." Without looking up, Jomo said, "You can't bribe a man with a will of steel." TCH. Gwen propped her chin in dismay, gazing lifelessly at the photo of Professor Lizard. On the way, Jomo couldn't help sneaking another peek. Frankly, the offer wasn't bad. Gwen was Spider-Woman and her dad was the police director, information came easily to her. Teaming up would make learning about mutants far simpler. But, it was Big Steel Teeth. Jomo found him rather lame. If it were Electro, he'd have agreed at once. The electromagnetic strongman was way more useful than Big Steel Teeth. Were it not for hiding his true motives, Jomo would have said, "Sure, but we'll nail Electro first." But that would spark Gwen's imagination and lead to unnecessary suspicions. While he mused, Gwen thought of the mother and child abducted by Professor Lizard and grew frantic. As she wondered how to locate him fastest and rescue the two, an image of Jomo sniffing her used bedding flashed through her mind. Clenching her teeth, Gwen slapped the table and declared, "Help me find him and save the victims. I'll give you my used bedding." Jomo froze mid-chew and slowly looked up. Feeling his gaze, Gwen's cheeks burned, but she forced herself to keep her chin high. "Well." Several seconds of silence. PFF'd. Ha ha ha. The moment Jomo laughed, Gwen's face reddened to her ears. Still chuckling while wiping his mouth, Jomo said, "You think that's a prize I can't refuse? Testing an officer with this." Blushing furiously, Gwen stared at the ceiling, pretending nothing had happened. Mortified, she could think of no better offer. Wiping his mouth, Jomo stood and nodded toward the door. "Let's go, together we'll catch Professor Lizard." Gwen looked up, even redder. "You. Hey." Jomo pocketed his hands and walked out first. Mainly for the extra food. Watching his back, Gwen shook her head in disdain, replaying his words in her mind. A man with a will of steel. Ha. He had to admit, you can't catch a wolf without risking the bait. For the sake of the electromagnetic strongman, he had to unlock Big Steel Teeth first, in a gloomy sewer tunnel. Stagnant rainwater slowly drained, drips and the occasional squeak of rats echoed in the damp darkness. Walking along the passage, hands in pockets, Jomo wore Gwen's camera around his neck as camouflage. If anyone spotted him, he could claim to be a reporter hunting photos of Spider-Woman. He'd even picked a byline, "AAA Little Joe, top investigative lens." Above, Spider-Gwen crawled along the ceiling. This was her headache. She knew Professor Lizard was in the sewers, but New York's underground maze was too vast. Searching alone was impossible. Following a route she'd checked before, Gwen couldn't help chattering. "Why do you think he dragged them here?" The clumsy watch's radar tingled in his mind. Jomo answered, "Western psychoanalyst Freud said humans have a death drive and a romantic drive." Gwen's worry returned. "You think his instinct is to kill them? It would indeed be a perfect place to murder and hide bodies. If so, the mother and child were in grave danger." Jomo corrected, "No, I think he's romantically repressed." Gwen fell silent, refusing to picture that. Jomo went on, "After all, an Eastern philosopher once said all psychological problems stem from romantical repression." Gwen couldn't resist retorting, "I've studied Eastern philosophy. I don't recall any famous philosopher saying that." Jomo nodded. "Now you know, those words come from Eastern philosopher Jomo." Gwen rolled her eyes. "Who? Me?" 2 seconds later Gwen froze and looked down, aghast. So your real name isn't Sun Xiaochuan. Correct. Jomo kept walking. We're teammates now, we can be honest with each other. Taking a deep breath, Gwen moved on. Then where are you from? Nebula M78, Land of Light. Huh. Where's that? Ultraman's home. Ultraman. Yep. A cartoon I'm fond of. Gwen's chest heaved, even her good temper cracked and she cursed under her breath. Does this guy ever speak a single honest sentence? After a pause, Jomo asked, if one day world governments made a deal ordering you to obey them, would you accept? Good question. Gwen considered it seriously, then shook her head. I'll respect order, but I won't take orders. My power is mine to control. I use it freely. I'm my own master, no one commands me. Jomo said, I sense him, turn left ahead. Gwen. Got it. After crawling a bit, Gwen wondered, how did you sense him? Jomo replied irritably, there's slime on the ground, if not him, who else? Gwen looked and faintly saw the mucus under Jomo's shoes. She instantly knew it was freshly left by Professor Lizard, and her nerves tightened. Yet after more crawling they still hadn't spotted him. Knowing Jomo talked more nonsense, Gwen still couldn't help chattering. Gwen whispered, secret. You know Johnny. He's a mutant too. Jomo nodded. I know, he also wanted me on his team. But the guy's no good, mouthy, blurts everything out. A circus motorcycle rider is the worst cover, and his control of his fire power is mediocre. But his teammate reads decent, a loaded rich guy, maybe I can squeeze some cash out of him. Gwen clicked her tongue. Was he mocking her or himself? He accused Johnny of spilling secrets, yet blurted the real name of Johnny's teammate. Gwen asked, sounds like you've fought him. Nope. After refusing, Jomo set the camera aside and transformed into Fireman. At the next corner, they saw Professor Lizard. After turning the corner, the lights ahead brightened, and a high-tech instrument crashed into view. The instrument stood upright, and a weeping woman was firmly bound to it, unable to move. Professor Lizard was typing on a keyboard nearby. It wasn't hard to imagine he was about to begin some kind of transformation experiment. And less than 3 meters from Professor Lizard, a sleeping 7 or 8-year-old boy lay on the ground, with a black jacket thoughtfully placed beneath him. These were the mother and son Gwen intended to rescue. Noticing the firelight behind him, Professor Lizard turned his head. Seeing Fireman, and then Spider-Man on the ceiling, Professor Lizard was on the verge of breaking down, grinding his teeth as he said in a deep voice, you've come at the wrong time. No, there's no better time for a rescue than now. Gwen's attention fell on the mother and son, and she quickly deployed a rescue plan in her mind. Having a rough idea for the rescue, Gwen looked at the instrument in confusion, lowering her voice, what is this? Fireman clasped his hands behind his head and yawned, he's going to use this thing to transform everyone in the city into someone like him. Looking down at Jomo, Gwen was even more puzzled. She hadn't told him this, had she? How did he know Professor Lizard was a transformed human? Professor Lizard was Gwen's university professor, but to minimize damage, Gwen hadn't revealed this. She worried that someone might capture Professor Lizard's other innocent family members to force him to appear, which would only lead to more people getting hurt. Thinking of Professor Lizard's character, and then the bizarre image of lizard men filling the city. Gwen denied it with some uncertainty, her voice still lowered, maintaining a one-sided whisper with Jomo, I don't think he would do such a thing. Wahahaha, that's right. Hearing Jomo's voice, Professor Lizard spread his arms and let out a sinister laugh, I will lead all humanity into glorious evolution. Gwen pursed her lips resentfully. All right, another mad scientist. It seems the lizard gene has affected his personality. No disease. No disability. Professor Lizard turned his head in ecstasy, his claw-like fingers gently tracing the woman's cheek. After 2 seconds of silence, he whispered tenderly, if we all become the same, there will be no monsters in this world. The woman wept, repeatedly sobbing, dear, don't do this. The situation was clear. After Professor Lizard mutated, he felt inferior due to his monstrous appearance, and thus decided to transform everyone in the city to be like him. His first targets were his wife and child. Jomo sniffed emotionally, such family harmony, truly wonderful. Gwen's eye twitched as she continued to crawl forward. She thought to herself, what kind of family harmony is this? Gwen kept her voice to a minimum. Can you hold him off? I'll go save them. Compared to Fireman, who was covered in flames, Spider-Man was clearly a more suitable rescuer. Jomo casually agreed. Dealing with Professor Lizard, this Kurami among Kuramis, was a piece of cake for him, easily handled. Gwen remembered something, stopped, and turned her head. I think it would be more appropriate if you changed your state. This was an enclosed space with hostages. Fireman could easily harm innocents. Wild Demon Vine would be more suitable. You're right. The flames turned blue, and Jomo switched to Ice Fireman. A chill swept up from below, and Gwen's heart twitched. She wondered, how did he have yet another state? As the main force, Jomo strode forward rapidly. One was actively walking towards him, the other was crawling in the shadows above. Clearly, Professor Lizard chose to deal with Ice Fireman first. Professor Lizard, like a small mountain, rushed forward, his impact making the ground tremble with each step. Seizing the opportunity, Gwen accelerated her crawl towards the mother and son. Midway, remembering Jomo's lack of experience, she quickly turned her head to warn, be careful of his. The moment her gaze swept over, Gwen saw Professor Lizard frozen into an ice sculpture, and she was stunned, tail. The two exchanged glances, and from that disdainful and lazy look, Gwen seemed to hear Jomo's voice. Is that all? She stiffly turned her head back, returning to her task of rescuing the people. Seeing the woman's pleading eyes, Gwen instinctively smiled, forgetting she was wearing a mask. At this moment, her attention was completely drawn to Jomo. She was utterly perplexed. She couldn't imagine why Jomo had so many abilities. And each one was stronger than the last. Where on earth did this guy come from? Thick ice covered Professor Lizard, who was frozen into an ice sculpture, with only his eyes able to move. Looking at the ice fireman before him, his pupils were filled with terror. As the victim, he also didn't know how Jomo did it. He was frozen into an ice sculpture before he could even react. Combat experience plus 7%. Jomo uninterestingly scanned Professor Lizard from top to bottom, then transformed into Fireman, controlling the flames, and placed his hand on Professor Lizard's side abdomen. After the flames melted the surrounding ice and disappeared, Ice Fireman pulled out Professor Lizard's wallet from his white coat pocket. Taking out the bank card inside, Ice Fireman looked up. In the same manner, he used his fire ability to unfreeze Professor Lizard's mouth. Holding his breath, the nervous Professor Lizard was so scared he didn't dare to speak. The air solidified for 2 seconds, then Ice Fireman showed the wallet, his face full of innocence. I found a wallet. Professor Lizard opened his mouth, thought for a moment, then closed it again. Ice Fireman looked down and flipped through it. How strange, I found that the photos inside are exactly the same as when you were human. Professor Lizard's lips tightened, and he forced a smile. Ice Fireman looked at him with pure eyes. Then you must know the bank card password, right? Professor Lizard silently shifted his eyes, feigning death as a response. He was only curious about his wife's condition now. At this, Jomo flew into a rage. Fine. Not going to tell me, huh? Jomo angrily looked around 7 times, finally finding a cigarette butt. He unfroze a part of Professor Lizard, lit the cigarette butt, and pressed it against Professor Lizard's butt. What I hate most is. Sizzle tilde, a barely audible sound, and the cigarette butt went out. Jomo was stunned for a moment, realizing the lizard's skin was very thick and the cigarette butt was useless. So Fireman ignited a big flame on one finger and fiercely poked it. Combat experience plus 37%. Sizzle sizzle sizzle, the sound rang out again, but this time it was much louder. Under the burning flame, the lizard's skin rapidly melted into grease, and a faint smell of cooked meat wafted out. Immediately, Professor Lizard's eyes widened in fury, and he let out a blood-curdling scream. Ah! Jomo was so angry he panted heavily. Let me tell you the truth. What I hate most are you criminals who have no bottom line in your actions. Still not satisfied after saying that, he used Ice Fireman's ability and pulled off one of Professor Lizard's toenails. Combat experience plus 11%. You use any means necessary to achieve your goals. You villains are the worst. Cursing viciously, Jomo pushed an ice dagger into Professor Lizard's body. Professor Lizard's tragic roar echoed through the passage, lingering for a long time. Ah! The sound that came made everyone who heard it tremble with fear. After rescuing the people, Gwen turned to look. She immediately saw Professor Lizard, kneeling on the ground, hands propped, tormented beyond recognition, and Ice Fireman, smugly waving the wallet in his hand. Seeing Gwen's gaze, Ice Fireman happily waved the wallet. He finally told me. Gwen was completely silent. Just looking at this scene, it was really hard to distinguish who the criminal was. The next second, Gwen's expression drastically changed. She saw that Professor Lizard's injuries were healing at a visible speed. At the same time, as Professor Lizard endured the excruciating pain and spat out his last mouthful of foul blood, the figure of Big Steel Teeth fully illuminated. Big Steel Teeth, unlocked. Professor Lizard was already a disabled man who had lost an arm. After injecting himself with lizard DNA, his arm regrew, gradually turning him into his current form. Jomo's ordeal would be a torturous punishment that left others both physically and mentally crippled. For his self-healing ability, it was merely a light appetizer. Staggering, Professor Lizard slowly stood up. Gwen could see that the wound behind him had largely healed. The newly risen Professor Lizard did not lose control with a loud shout. His deep voice was extremely calm, like a mastermind behind a successful conspiracy. Now, you can evolve together with me. Having finished speaking, Professor Lizard snapped his head around, his grotesque grin frightening Gwen into a shiver. Professor Lizard pulled a remote control from another pocket. Seeing it, Gwen's gaze suddenly fixed on several large gas canisters beside the device, panic flashing across her face. Ice Fireman glanced at Professor Lizard. Sensing Ice Fireman's stare, Professor Lizard's terrifying smile instantly vanished. In a hurry, Professor Lizard quickly pressed the button. PSSSHH. The canisters activated, releasing a massive cloud of white mist. The plan proceeded smoothly. Professor Lizard breathed a sigh of relief, finally daring to laugh heartily, spreading his arms in a victorious pose. Stopping me is useless, it's already too late. The gas will travel through the water pipes to every corner of New York. When that happens, everyone will inhale the gas and evolve into a higher species. This was originally his follow-up plan after modifying his wife and child, but now he had to implement it ahead of schedule. In response, Jomo switched to Fireman, waved his hand, and the entire passage above his head ignited in flames. Under his fire control, heat waves swept the gas, pushing it toward Fireman's back. In the suburbs, the iron net leading to the sea was blown open by the flames, and a huge amount of white gas poured out, clinging to the empty sea surface. The sea breeze carried it far away, and the gas gradually vanished without a trace. The crisis was averted. Professor Lizard stared blankly at Fireman, motionless, stunned once more. The direction of the advancing flames led to a drainage outlet near the sea, which was dozens of streets away from here. His flames could spread for dozens of streets. His frozen body trembled, and threads of fear slipped from Professor Lizard's pupils. Is he really that strong? Gwen let out a sigh on the other side. After the flames burned, the sealed passage was noticeably low on oxygen, and the air still carried a scorching sensation. But compared to turning into a lizard on the spot, this was already perfect. Seeing the woman holding a child unharmed, Gwen breathed a sigh of relief. She even felt a bit redundant at this moment. The lizard professor, who had been troubling her for days, was easily dealt with by Jomo. And if Jomo wanted, he could now crush her as well. Jomo's power repeatedly reshaped Gwen's perception of him. Watching his silhouette, Gwen's throat twitched, she swallowed silently, and fear inevitably flickered in her eyes. Powerful and mysterious, what is his true background? The frozen Professor Lizard pointed at Fireman and suddenly exclaimed excitedly, "No! You inhaled the gas." Fireman stood at an adult male's height, taller than Gwen and the woman by more than a head. And the raging flames just now brushed past Fireman's head. Spider-Man and his wife are short, so they might not have been affected. But at such a close distance, that concentration of gas could not have left Fireman untouched. The gas wave that surged behind Fireman could have slammed directly onto his face. Professor Lizard was confident about this. To mutate the entire city, his self-made mutation gas was extremely concentrated, even inhaling a single whiff could trigger mutation. Professor Lizard laughed heartily, feeling that this was a blessing in misfortune. If such a powerful being became his own kind, he would surely do the same things he does. After all, would he ever be unafraid of others' discrimination? The gas was odorless, and Jomo didn't know if he had inhaled it. To be safe, he switched to Wild Demon Vine. Gwen worried after hearing that. As an outsider, she naturally continued not to use her real name. Otto, are you okay? Jomo turned his head. Gwen, wearing a mask, couldn't see his expression, but clearly saw terror crawling across the woman's face. The woman, seeing Jomo transform into a wild demon vine and turn his head to look at her, was so frightened that she clutched her son tightly and took several steps back. Her professor husband turned into a lizard creature and became wildly violent. What this powerful mutant will do after becoming a lizard, she could hardly imagine. On one side are the worried teammates, on the other the triumphant villains. Feeling both sides focusing on her, Jomo sighs wearily. Even if I really inhaled it, don't they know the wild demon vine is immune to toxic gas attacks? Oh right, they truly don't know. The minor gas mutation incident is resolved, and the moment Jomo turns back, he becomes Big Steel Teeth. Professor Lizard is stunned at first, then becomes even happier. Now even Gwen is scared enough to protect the mother and child, stepping back a few paces. At a glance, the lizard person and Big Steel Teeth can't look exactly alike, but they're at least cousins. This is clearly a sign of mutation. The only comforting thing is that it's not as grim as Professor Lizard. Big Steel Teeth looks ugly cute, not as terrifying. Seeing Gwen worry that Jomo, after mutating, might turn dark like Professor Lizard, she can't help but be concerned. If that happens, she might not be able to stop it, even. She might even be killed. Without a second thought, Big Steel Teeth throws a punch that can punch through walls. Professor Lizard crosses his arms to protect his chest. Although it blocks the blow, he's still knocked back several meters. Landing, he spits a mouthful of murky blood. His face turns pale, but his smile remains. Even if you kill me, it won't change you, you'll only become like me. Professor Lizard, obsessed, extends his hand. My kin, join me. Who's that ugly guy, claiming to be my kin? For this fool, Jomo can't even be bothered to speak, chasing him down for a brutal beating. Professor Lizard is battered into a panic, utterly defenseless. Gradually, Gwen looks bewildered, realizing the situation isn't developing as she imagined. Even an ordinary woman can see that Big Steel Teeth's attack on Professor Lizard is like a father beating his son, extremely easy. The combat gap between the two is outright crushing. Beaten unilaterally, Professor Lizard flies into a rage and shouts a curse. Seizing the chance, he glances tenderly at his wife and child, then instantly strikes Big Steel Teeth with a sinister blow. I swear, I will hunt down you, my traitorous kin, to the ends of the earth. With a splash, Professor Lizard jumps into the water. The water is deep and murky, yet one can barely see Professor Lizard fleeing quickly. He keeps claiming he isn't afraid of death, that killing himself won't help. But when he realizes he can't retaliate, he honestly chooses to run away. Gwen sighs in relief after watching. Regardless, the person was saved. Next, they'll return to check Jomo's condition. Having confirmed Professor Lizard's range of activity, they can find another time to capture him. Just as they're about to ask Jomo's opinion, Gwen sees Big Steel Teeth trembling with rage. Hunt me. Even you, want to hunt me. Alright, I only wanted to play with you, handle some work, but now I have to kill you. With another splash, Big Steel Teeth also jumps in. Digesting those words, Gwen is puzzled and bewildered. Play. Was the earlier beating of Professor Lizard just him playing around? Then what's his true strength like? The inner question arises, as if answered. Gwen sees Big Steel Teeth's legs, now transformed into a tail, after leaping into the water. Gwen isn't surprised, her reaction is fine. The woman, however, gasps in terror. How did the legs become a tail? 2 seconds later, Gwen also gasps in terror. Big Steel Teeth, after diving, is like a completely different person. If the water-bound Professor Lizard is a fish, his speed is like a rocket. When he tightens his tail and swims powerfully, each flick of the fish tail creates a wave several meters high. Within seconds of entering the water, the current boils like a raging pot. Occasionally, the surge splashes onto Gwen and the woman's faces, painfully stinging. The aftershock makes everything around violently shake, as if an earthquake. A sense of apocalyptic panic erupts in both women's hearts. Gwen's face turns pale. She protects the mother and child, retreating step by step, her heart trembling. She now wants to ask one thing. What the hell is going on? Thanks for watching.